I'm going to call today's May 4th at 6 p.m. I'm calling the Selma City Council regular meeting located at Selma City Council Chambers on 1710 Tucker Street and in Selma, California, and also via teleconference phone number 1301-715-8592. ID is 848-8066-1260. And the password code to get in is 93662. Before we begin, I need to read a statement regarding our meeting before we begin. So I'm just going to read it real brief statement. On March 4th, 2020, Governor Newsom proclaimed a state of emergency in California as the result of the threat of COVID-19. On March 17th, 2020, Governor Newsom issued Executive Order N-2920, which allows a local legislative body to hold a public meeting via teleconferencing and to make public meetings accessible telephonically or otherwise electronically to all members of the public seeking to observe and to address the local legislative body. Pursuant to Executive Order N-2920, please be advised that some or all of the City of Selma Council will participate in meetings via teleconference. Public participation pursuant to Executive Order N-2920, and given the current health concerns, members of the public can access meetings streamed live on our YouTube page. Members of the public may not attend the meeting in person. In lieu of attendance at the meeting, the public can provide public comments verbally for the City Council consideration by calling in on the number posted on our agenda. Staff will unmute the public during the public comment portion of the meeting. Alternatively, the public can send correspondence to the City Council regarding agenda items by emailing publiccomment@cityofselma.com by 1 p.m. on the day of the meeting with the subject line City Council meeting correspondent item number and refer to the agenda item you wish to comment on. Or in the subject line, you can add City of Selma non-agenda item. All correspondence that does not relate to a specific item on the agenda will be made part of the official record of this meeting and will be referred to the city manager or other staff for any other appropriate actions or attention. Correspondence that does relate to a specific item on the agenda will be addressed as appropriate during consideration of the agenda item to which it relates. Contact the city clerk with any questions by phone at City Hall 559-891-2200 extension 3104 or by emailing the email address referenced above, which is publiccomment@cityofselma.com. So with that formality out of the way, we will continue with our invocation led by Father Lupi Rios of St. Joseph Catholic Church. Father Lupi?
Yes, 1 second. Let me unmute. Can you hear me?
We can
Yes,
hear
we
you.
can.
Very good. All right. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit.
Amen.
A reading from the Gospel of Luke. He also told this parable to some who trusted in themselves that they were righteous and despised others. 2 men went up into the temple to pray, one a Pharisee and the other a tax collector. The Pharisee stood and prayed thus with himself: God, I thank thee that I am not like the other men, extortioners, unjust, adulterers, or even like this tax collector. I fast twice a week. I give tithes of all that I get. But the tax collector, standing far off, would not even lift up his eyes to heaven, but beat his breast, saying, God, be merciful to me, a sinner. I tell you, this man went down to his house justified rather than the other. For everyone who exalts himself will be humbled, but he who humbles himself will be exalted. Heavenly Father, we, your public servants, gather to serve the community that you have entrusted to us. And so as we do so, we call upon your name with all humility, with all devotion, with all openness, during this time of infirmity, during this time of sickness. Heavenly Father, as your people and as your servants, speak through us, love through us, and move through us, and help us to be responsive to your holy voice and your grace within our hearts. We ask this through Christ our Lord. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Father Lupi.
Welcome, welcome.
Okay. Okay, now we'll have Councilmember Avalos lead us in our Pledge of Allegiance.
Oh, okay, there's a flag behind you, Franco, and there's a flag behind the city. I don't know if you see it behind me here. Okay, I'm ready. I pledge allegiance to the flag, United States of
States
America,
of America, and to the republic
stands
for which it
one
stands,
nation, under God,
under God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
with liberty
with
and
liberty and
justice
justice
for all.
Oh. Okay, roll call, please.
Councilmember Avalos.
Here.
Councilmember Robertson.
Here.
Councilmember Trujillo.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Guerra.
Here.
Mayor Franco.
Here. Potential conflicts of interest. Any council member who has a potential conflict of interest may now identify the item and recuse themselves from discussing and voting on the matter. Seeing that we have none, we will move on to our oral communication. Notice to the public. At this time, any member of the public may address the city council regarding any item which the council has jurisdiction. No action or discussion will be taken on any item not on the agenda. Issue raised will be referred to the city manager for review. Members of the public shall limit the remarks to 3 minutes. City Clerk, do we have anybody public wishing to make any comments?
I do not see that we have any members of the public on the line, and I do not see any emails on the public comment email.
Okay. With that, we will move on to our next item on our agenda, which is special presentation. We have 2 presentations. We'll begin with the first one, which is the Council Priorities Quarterly Report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council, audience and viewers. This is our quarterly report on council's priorities as established in last year's budget priorities setting workshop. This quarterly report is for the period from January 1st through the end of March. And it goes over the activities that highlights many of the activities that we've been working on. Here's the cover of the presentation. As I said, going January through March. We'll go into, this is just a refresher on what last year's priorities were. There were 4 major areas. There were 6 areas overall, but 4 major priority areas. And at the end of this presentation, I'll we're going to have a quick discussion about some of those priority areas and how we would be moving forward with this upcoming budget. But for right now, I'd like to go ahead and go through the review of the quarter from January through March. In the area of public safety, which was one of your top priority areas, next slide. We have increased staffing was your #1 goal for public safety. Between January and March, we hired Police Chief Gomez. We hired 2 firefighters, and to get the new EMS division up and running, we hired 1 paramedic, 2 full-time employee EMTs, and 3 part-time EMTs to get, again, the emergency medical services unit going. Next slide, please. The second priority area was economic development for council members. And part of that, one of the goals was project tracking. We continue to provide periodic updates and distribute the planning projects report that was distributed in January. And then again, last month in April. Between January through March, we had more than 20 meetings and calls regarding approximately 16 potential or current development projects. We prepared for ICSC in Monterey and registered and had travel ready for, as we were gearing up for Las Vegas, which would have been this month. But unfortunately, we all know that these events were canceled due to the pandemic. We had been working on and waiting from the state on the Central Valley Job Training Center, the high-speed rail training facility project. And good news, last month, we received the executed contract and sent out a press release and are getting going with our partners on that. The Fresno County Rural Transit Agency project, we are working on moving the fire training facility over to the corporate yard. And in this past quarter, the concrete pads were poured that will that the fire training facility will sit on. So that project work has begun. And in this past quarter, we also applied for Measure C transit-oriented development grant for up to $200,000 to offset impact fees for a 20-unit apartment complex on McCall and Danuba. That is the Nelson Apartment Complex. And we were invited to present to the Council of Governments Scoring Committee. That presentation opportunity has been pushed out a bit due to COVID, but we are scheduled to present to the Scoring Committee on this grant application at the end of the month on the 26th of May. One of the other priority goal areas under economic development that council identified was the need for a dedicated position, and we have hired an economic development administrative analyst, Tracy Tosta, in this past quarter. Very successful recruitment. Next slide, please. Another goal area in economic and community development is to improve and streamline procedures. We continue to work on the housing element update, and a new property owner has been identified. We had previously identified a property owner willing to rezone their property. However, that changed course, and we have now a new property owner. They have filled out the application in conjunction with assistance from our consultants so that we can proceed with that rezoning. It is slated to go to the Planning Commission in July. They're right now starting the CEQA work that is required for that. We also prepared a business survey in this last quarter along with our partners at the EDC and the Chamber. And that business survey was ready to roll out. It was asking questions about our business community's needs and getting feedback on city services that the business community engages in. Due to COVID, though, that was postponed. It is ready for the time when we feel that we can go ahead and get that out and have valid results. Also, another goal area is to research and stem sales tax leakage. We work with Uni Services, which is now called Avenue Insights, and they catch reporting errors and update the city quarterly on our sales tax revenue. And we have been working on transitioning to HDL for future reporting services. In fact, you'll hear more about that this evening on the agenda. We continue to work with the EDC on responding to leads and developing materials to promote Selma. Another goal area under this priority area is to develop ways to educate the business community and increase sales tax revenue, pay appropriately to assist with beautification. We applied for a USDA Rural Development Block Grant, and that was for a feasibility study for a downtown business improvement district. So that application was completed in this past quarter, and a business improvement district would be an asset to the downtown area. We also, in this quarter, our economic development analyst has been very busy updating the developselma.com website with resources for our business community. And of course, since the pandemic, quickly used that platform to also post numerous resources for the business community and our residents in general about COVID. And she also has started doing biweekly emails to our business community. So if a business wants to sign up and receive those emails with updates as what is happening in regard to COVID and how it's impacting businesses, or up-to-date information, they can get that email. She's also sent out numerous press releases along with other staff regarding information that would be helpful to businesses, and fielded numerous calls and done business visitations to assist businesses with adapting to the protocols as obviously COVID-19 restrictions came into place and the stay-at-home orders increased. Next slide. The next goal area, or priority area, excuse me, is community culture, environment, who we are. And one of the goals under there is to update on the speakers and downtown for atmosphere, lights, music. We did apply for a CDBG funding for downtown sidewalk repair, ADA sidewalk repair as well, and wanted to utilize those funds. Also look at the infrastructure improvements for electrical and irrigation improvements that need to be done. That is part now of the county's consolidated plan, annual plan, and it's going to the Board of Supervisors for their approval. We do need to look to next steps for other funding sources for other aspects of the revitalization for downtown. Our new economic development analyst has been connected with Rincon, who is doing circuit planning work for us in regard to downtown as well, and a potential overlay zone. So Tracy is transitioning to work on that. Also, Public Works did sidewalk resurfacing, removing trip hazards in certain areas of downtown during this last quarter. And they'll give an update later this evening on additional work that's forthcoming. And we met with the American Legion regarding an MOU for the project of the Lincoln Plaza beautification. And so that meeting with them again in the very near future. Next page, please. Continuing with community, culture, environment, PR. Another goal area was to review policies and codes to accommodate and implement. And in this last quarter, we adopted and are implementing the new shopping cart ordinance. We also had you all approved for us a budget allocation for nuisance abatement of city property at Rockwell Pond. And we work closely with a private property owner to also clean up their property as well. We declared the emergency disaster that then led us into implementing an employee leave policy for COVID, developing a telecommuting policy for COVID, and we developed and implemented health screening protocols for all departments that we are currently using. And fire has also during this quarter identified some missing policies and is working on updating their policies in regard to, I think it was in regard to contagious diseases. Chief Peterson can explain more in his report. Next slide, please. Okay, continuing on with this priority area, one of the goals was the freeway exits are welcome mats to our city. Let's keep them blight free. Public Works, code enforcement, and the police department do continue to work with Caltrans, and they've been found them very responsive. We also continue to work with the railroad as well, although right now, due to COVID, their response, they are not going out and doing as much cleaning up as they were before. But Caltrans is still doing, working with us. We also have coordinated with partners, our city partners, and also the Council of Governments in Tulare and obviously Fresno Council of Governments in regard to support for Mountain View Avenue interchange improvements. And as council directed, we will bring back an amended resolution to the council in June to look again at a resolution of support for the freeway interchange there. And while it's not right on the exit of the freeway, you can see this from the freeway, and that is Rockwell Pond. So that was cleaned up, as I mentioned previously, in this last quarter. Another goal in this priority area was to maintain property values. And we had 212 code enforcement cases that were opened in this quarter and 185 of them closed, 27 still being worked on. We've been investing in community improvement projects that will help with property values. The construction of the new police station being one of the most obvious. Renovations in parks, Ringo Park Playground. We had the ribbon cutting event in this past quarter for that playground. That was very popular and successful. The Rock Pond Park, we received very good news that we received that grant, and we discussed with council property negotiations, closed session, and we also discussed with council some future potential future fire station sites, as well as some parking options for Pioneer Village. Next slide, please. The next priority area for the council is the city as an entity and customer service. And under that, the council asked us to look at the goals of reviewing our current policies to make sure that they are current, relevant for our procedures and our codes. And many of those things that we've been working on are also under page 7. So as we've talked about in the past, some of these fall into a couple of different areas. So I think we've discussed those. Adequate staffing was another goal area that the council wanted to make sure we were looking at all departments and programs, reviewing for efficiency, including code enforcement. And as I mentioned in one of the previous slides, we had several recruitments in public safety that we fulfilled. In addition to that, we have received information from the school district that they may not be continuing with 2 of our officers as school resource officers. So we are planning on bringing them back into the police department to be fully funded by the city. So we are looking at that in our upcoming budget, which means while we would not increase the number of full-time employees by bringing them back, because they already are counted as a full-time employee for the police department, we would be increasing the number of officers on patrol if they both do come back. We don't have a final number on whether or not the school district will be using one or neither, but we're planning, you know, we're looking at the budget to see what we can do if both of them come back. Also, we worked on the community development director recruitment, and that position is unfilled as the top candidate withdrew their application. As I mentioned, the admin analyst for economic development, that was successfully completed. All right, the next page. So continuing on with those goals, we do look at the organizational assessment and reviewing for efficiency during the budget process and throughout the year. This was some of the organizational changes here that we made last year to our org chart. And we are now obviously starting our budget process for fiscal year 2021 and our capital improvement program process. So just point that out as a refresher that we do use this time to look at our organization and assess any potential changes that would be more efficient. Next slide. In particular, PD, clearly Chief Gomez is right now assessing his department, and Fire has been working very hard on the new EMS division. That's a big organizational change for us as well. In administration, as we talked about last year for our organizational culture, we are looking at doing an employee service recognition event. A committee was formed and met about this, and then COVID hit, so it may change. It may look a little different moving forward from what we had planned, which was a large gathering, but that's still on our radar to do that. The new website, the RFPs have been reviewed, and we are receiving presentations for the top companies to do a new website. So that would be a very effective tool for us. Next page, and I'm getting to the end of this. The next page is the city as an entity, again, customer service. We're continuing on with our organizational assessments. This past quarter, clearly a big part of our organization was coming together as a COVID response team. We had partial activation of our emergency operations center positions and regular meetings to implement the restrictions, the protocols, and the compliance needed to get through this pandemic at the various stages. Community services, very much so impacted, became a hub of volunteer coordination and coordination for increased senior services. The senior center is basically repurposed as that hub, and staff and volunteers and people, organizations in the community have come forward to donate tremendously. And in that effort, the city through this assistance is now delivering food to at-risk residents, approximately 225 meals a day, Monday through Friday. So that has been a big organizational change. Administration, our city council meetings clearly have moved and transitioned to Zoom. The city clerk has done a fabulous job with that. And our outreach efforts have greatly increased. Our public information officer work has been highly coordinated. We've been sending out numerous news releases, robocalls, created a new Facebook page, did our first video together with staff and mayor and council members. And we also have a new Instagram account. We posted numerous signs in parks, in the community, distributed them, and as well as flyers. Now that we're delivering meals to 225 seniors daily, that's another great way to get information to them that maybe they had not been receiving before. So just another way that we've adapted. And next slide is one of the other council priorities was priority areas was community engagement and education, finding ways to engage our grassroots. So we have supported and held events before we couldn't do that anymore. We had some really fun ones. The community meet and greet for Chief Gomez was well attended. The Ringo Park Playground ribbon cutting, the Blossom Trail opening. We participate in Leadership Selma. As I mentioned, a volunteer coalition was started to assist with food distribution. We had a stakeholder meeting with leaders from healthcare, transit, Selma Unified School District regarding COVID. And we had a stakeholder meeting with mayor and council members and legislators from the county, state, and federal levels, all in regard to COVID and what is going on in our community and what they were working on at the legislative levels. So that kind of takes us through those priorities. And maybe the next slide, if we can, I'll just share that with you. And we can go to questions after that. I just wanted to share this with you. What I think might be worthwhile is to see if these were the priority areas for the city council last year. If we keep this kind of at a high level for today's discussion, and I just would like to affirm if these are still your priority areas or if you see them changing. And then maybe the goals, there were 25 goals last year that we discussed, that we do that at a future meeting where we're not Zoom, where we can have more of a dialogue. And after you get some more budget information, I think that might be helpful to you for your consideration. Last year, we had priority areas and you each voted on your top 2 priority areas. There were a total of 6 areas, but only 4 of them received votes. So public safety was the top vote getter, as well as economic development. Each of those had 4 votes. And then the community culture and community development each received a vote. So, Mayor, if and council members, if it's fine with you, I'd like to know what that looks like, areas that are still your top priorities.
Okay, we just go in order. Jim, do you have any comments on your top priorities at the current moment?
No, they're still, they look good as they stand right now at this moment.
Okay. How about you, Councilman Trujillo?
Where does the infrastructure fall in this here?
Yeah, that one is under community development. And
Okay, that's what I thought. I was wondering, are you including it in economic and community development,
yes,
or economic development?
under economic development and community culture, typically who we are, and some efficiency areas. So it's kind of depending on what it was, it's been in different areas. Last quarter, the SKF workshop that we held in December, that was reported out in, I believe, an efficiency area. The housing element is under economic development. So it's been merged in a couple of areas.
Is that all your comments, John?
Yeah, I'm good.
Councilman Robertson, any comments?
I think now more than ever, public safety is #1, as I voted for last year and 4 of us did, because I think it encompasses even more than, police and fire. We traditionally associate with that term. Now it's health safety, which goes even beyond that. And so I would say definitely public safety and economic development are the 2 most important priority areas for the city the coming year.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Guerra?
I'd like to say the same. The public safety was my vote as well, economic development. And then my other one is revitalizing downtown. So does that fall under community culture environment?
That is how we have that right now. But I think it also fits under economic development.
Okay.
So I think the basic at the moment, all our priorities are basically still the same and you have them encompassed here. And if I understand you correctly, we're going to revisit it at the next meeting where more likely we're all together in a room. It can be a little bit more engaged and talk about the subject.
Yes, that seems, I think, a good recommendation if Mayor and Council are fine with that. And Mayor, you're affirming that your 2 priorities are community and development and economic development?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Well, they're all my priorities, but those were the 2 top ones I voted for.
Yes.
So I have a question.
Absolutely.
So when we get back to speaking together or meeting together, will we break this down a little more? Because this is kind of vague. I mean, you're saying that infrastructure falls into three categories, or all three categories. Doesn't that kind of water it down? I mean, are we
We can firmly just,
just asking? I know that, these, I'm in agreement, public safety, economic development, but I mean, the threshold of our infrastructure is gonna boost up our economic development. And we've been doing this, talking about this for the last 12 years, and I'm just wondering if this is where we want to go, that's fine. But I'm just concerned.
if council would like to make that part of economic development, merge economic and community development, we'll report it consistently in that area because it is a priority for development, period.
Okay.
But they're kind of tied together.
Correct.
All right, with that, if we don't have any more questions for council, we'll move on to our next presentation. So seeing that, thank you, City Manager. We're gonna move on to our next presentation, which is our 10-year financial forecast report.
Mayor, council members, thank you. We'll give a moment here to kind of let the presentation pull up. We kind of want to bring this to you today. Normally what we do is actually have this conversation during the budget workshop, but given what the COVID impacts and things of nature that are happening throughout not just the market, but on the state level, as well as our sales tax impacts for this fiscal year, we thought it'd be a little bit better to have this conversation earlier sooner than later. So we'll go through some of the impacts that COVID's doing, expectantly for the sales tax impacts, and kind of go through some of these slides. If you have questions, go ahead and please chime in, and we'll kind of walk through some of this information. So on the first slide here, we have our sales tax impacts to the COVID-19. So on March 30th, Governor Newsom signed an executive order allowing the California Department of Tax and Fee Administration to offer the following aspects. The overall objective of this executive order was, as you're aware, with closures and things of that nature, the sales tax revenue that are generated was basically been on standby because businesses weren't able to operate, therefore unable to generate revenue, but still, as far as fixed costs, we're still incurring. For a good example is that it was for our store location that is leased a facility. Your lease doesn't end at that standpoint, right? You're still continuing to incur those impacts, but your revenue generation is still not there. So some of the things that they did was businesses 1 million a tax liability received a 90-day extension from the first quarter. So what that means is the January through March projected sales tax can actually be waived for 90 days to be able to push out, to give them a little more ability and flexibility to capture some of the revenue streams, allow them to fluctuate through those months so they can retain them and utilize them for their fixed costs. Additional impact was for small businesses, $4,000 in sales and use tax liabilities deferred as well, but not also deferred, but also being able to push out for MA payments for a period of 12 months. So again, allowing these smaller businesses to retain those sales tax and make what they call basically a payment plan over the period of 12 months. Okay, so you're seeing some ebb and flow here. One, allowing these businesses to push out these sales tax payment that they're having to pay to the CDTFA, but it also does affect our how we receive sales tax. Not just that, but you're also having the market downturn, which we're all aware of, which we'll go into a little now with the sales tax projections for the current fiscal year, as well as for our 10-year forecast. So our projection for sales tax for this year, we're looking at an impact of about 9.2% decrease just for this fiscal year, which is about $600,000 or so. Okay, as you're well aware, that's a large impact to anyone's budget overall. So we'll kind of walk through what that looks like. This presentation actually leads into the other presentation that I'll have later this afternoon, which is a budget update for the third quarter. So if you have questions regarding the current budget, we may want to leave it until that standpoint. The next impact that we have here is with our growing budget that we're talking about now, as far as decrease. We're looking at a 7.5 decrease in sales back projection on top of what we're seeing for this fiscal. So the way the sales tax projection looks like or works is basically you take your forecast for this fiscal and then you build in an estimate for the next fiscal year. So in this instance, what they're doing is taking the new projected impact for our sales tax revenue for this fiscal, then decreasing it again that much further by another 7.5%. Next slide, please. So what I've done is basically take a little model here and kind of project it out what it looks like. So on the very tip side of it, you see our current budget year, and what we actually estimated was around 6.6 to be projected in. The reason I have this slide is I really want to give you a clear picture on what our sales tax consultants now Avenue or actually projecting and what it takes for us to actually get back to where we projected to be for this fiscal year. So as I stated, we're taking about a $600,000 drop in this fiscal, but if you look at this chart, it's what we're currently budgeted right now at a 6.6. They're projecting for us not to be able to get back to that standpoint or close to it until the year 2025, 26. So you can see as we ramp down quite fast here, it is going to take us quite a few years to actually build back up to what we actually are projected to be or expected to be for the budget year this year. Is there any questions regarding that slide before I move forward? No? Okay. We'll go ahead and move into the next slide, please. So some of the analysis that goes into a 10-year forecast, obviously there are some unforeseens and things of that nature. So revenue consideration, you have sales tax projections. Those are numbers that are given directly out of the reports that were given. The most current information that we received, I believe it was Monday that I got the most current report, which again kind of triggered, we need to really have this conversation sooner better than later. The next revenue consideration is no increase in housing. What that means is you're not having an increase in property tax due to new development, although there is some projects that are considerably being discussed quite constant. Within this model, you're not going to see that increase. Another increment that could be considered is no increase in sales tax filers. What that means is no new filing system, so no new businesses coming into the city, kind of keeping your revenue stream as is with the current market. The reason you do that again is because until you bring somebody in and that permit is pulled or their sales tax are starting to generate, it's really difficult, one, to forecast what they can, although you could use their other market areas to see what they do and kind of project some of that revenue out. It's really difficult to say, hey, yeah, we're going to get that revenue stream. That is going to come in. So it's difficult to build that projection in. We try not to build it in, although you know that as a council, you can see what those impacts can do to our revenue stream for a city. New housing incurs new property tax. It also increases local shopping, which increases sales tax. So they do have ramifications in the budget, but for this actual projection, we tend to leave those out. The next item is expenditure consideration. Salaries is always the biggest one that we're going to look at. There are some MOU negotiations that will be occurring next fiscal that I have to compensate for, whether that's a pro or con. I just use a standard marker of 3%. This just allows me to build in a number, given what we've done in the past per se, and keep it kind of flat in that instance. So that is something that one can be tapered down or could be brought up considering on where we're at and where those negotiations go. But for a forecasting model, I like to use an average of 3%. That does compensate as well for step increases for new employees. As you're aware, they get a 5% increment as they go through their step process, as they hit those markers. So that is kind of projected into this model as well. The pension for the unfunded liability increase. This does not take into effect the impacts that are going to be done for the fiscal loss that's going to happen and generate a new UAL in the coming years of 21-22, if I said that correctly. So that is not taken to that impact. And then also we do have the prepayment that we're going to be doing that will impact that fiscal year as well. I did not bring that into the model because I wanted to use information that I currently have available. Those are still not populated out. Our actual PERS is looking into the information of what it looked like of a projected loss from a 0 to -3% in their their projected gains and losses. So we're building that into a new model to be able to project what we can do in the next fiscal years. But be aware that is going to be a factor in the next fiscal years and the second one actually. And then we also again have that prepayment for the unfunded liability that we'll be applying to as well. So once we do have that projected information on how that impacts, I'll be reviewing that for you as an isolated item for that prepayment. I do still believe that it's good to get people to make that payment. It will increase or not increase, but it will help us to decrease our liabilities on those unfunded liabilities that we currently have, those amortization schedules, to be able to take some of that offset to the increase we're going to make to maybe flatten that out a little bit more. Increases the operations and maintenance cost. As you're aware, most of us have contracts with larger organizations that have built-in CPIs. So you got to project out some of those CPIs with a flat or flat market rate of overall 3%, depending on what the services is. So that is built into this model of an increase of operation cost. Same thing with utilities. It goes up every year. So we kind of build that into the model as well to be able to forecast this out. So there's a lot of variables that are built into this projection. There also is some impacts like, again, sales tax impacts or housing impacts, new filers that can change this model and increase over years. Next slide, please. So now you can see the projection of our revenues and our expenditures through this fiscal year. Again, looking at the fiscal year of 1920, we'll get into that a little bit later and how that looks. But you can see from our current projections of 2021, you're seeing a great separation right off the bat. And again, that's coming back to that sales tax drop that we're having. When we first started looking at our models of where we're kind of landing our budget conversations, that's pretty much where we landed. It's pretty much a separation of about 1.4. We are working on the budget and working down that number and working with department heads to get that figured out. So I wouldn't use that as a benchmark of where we're going into the budget. I would just use that as an understanding of what potentially could be with it just moving forward. Okay. As you can see, you'll continue to separate in 2021 and so on and so forth. Again, we have a strong fiscal policy to kind of combat that at this point. So I think we're doing everything that we need to do. I think to making those strong statements now of addressing this, instead of trying to say, hey, we'll just have to let reserves filter it out and we'll be fine. I think making those adjustments and having those hard conversations now is really where we need to be doing to make sure that we can sustain the long-term objective, which is growing the city. Is there any questions regarding this slide? Okay.
A question.
Yes.
What kind of expenditures, which are projected to far outstrip revenues, what are some of the drivers in those expenditures increasing at the rate which they're projecting them to increase?
The biggest one is always going to be labor. I mean, you have your unfunded liability projected in there. You have cost increase, again, of 3 to 5%, depending on the labor market. Your unfunded liability is built into that. It's always going to be around 66%, 65% of your overall. So that's going to be the biggest driver, obviously, for any city, as far as your overall expenditure part. Then you have your operations and maintenance, professional service contracts that are going to start building into that.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any other questions from council? Okay, with that, I think, thank you, Isaac, for the sobering update, and we will talk more about it in the future.
Thank you, Mayor, council members.
Okay, before we move on to the consent calendar, I want to call back the city manager for clarification.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. I did look up last quarter's priority report, and I just wanted to confirm that infrastructure has been reported under economic development, and it was under the improve and streamline procedures section of economic development. So just wanted to clarify that for Councilmember Trujillo's question.
Thank you. Okay, with that, we are going to move on to consent calendar. All items listed under the consent calendar category are considered routine. The complete consent calendar will be enacted by one motion by roll call vote. For a purpose of discussion, any council member may have any item removed from the consent calendar and made part of the regular agenda. The council then can approve the remainder of the consent calendar. Does any council member wish to have any consent item removed?
I'd like to remove item C.
Councilman Robertson likes item C. Is there any other items? Okay.
I'll make a
with
motion
that-
to approve items A and B.
Let's second
I'll
it.
second it.
We have a second. I didn't catch you a second. You guys were quick there. Was it you, Jim?
Yep. Quick.
Okay. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Robertson,
Aye.
Councilmember Avalos,
Aye.
Councilmember Trujillo,
He's muted.
Aye.
thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Guerra,
Aye.
Mayor Franco.
Aye. Okay, C, check register. Go ahead, Scott.
Page 20, check number 74740. Department of Industrial, probably Relations and Home Well. OSHA penalty for 5,000. What's that all about?
I'll go ahead and turn that over to Chief Peterson. He can take that.
Yep, Mayor and council members, what that was back in October. One of our members had a medical emergency while on duty. And due to that, we went through the OSHA investigative process and we were issued the $5,000 fine for not notifying OSHA within the proper time frame that they require. We did take those funds out of our reimbursement account, so it did not affect the general fund or any other city departments. And since then, we have updated all of our OSHA policies and implemented training throughout our department to ensure that we don't have anything like that happen again.
So I'm assuming that the department has an illness and injury prevention program that's, or an SB 198 as it's known, that's current and up to date.
It is, yes. We just recently after this reviewed all of our existing OSHA policies and did find that several of them needed to be updated. That was one of them. And we have updated really all of the policies to make sure that we are current and compliant.
Because I'm familiar with some of their timelines. For instance, you know, the 24 hours, if someone is hospitalized and 24 hours to turn in the paperwork, but they're usually not as hard on the latter as they are on the former. And another thing is, I know the city spends a lot on its self-insurance program through the RMA. It might benefit the city to avail ourselves of the consultant to help us review that illness and injury prevention program if we haven't already done so. Thank you.
Sure.
Do you have any other questions on this check register, Scott?
That's it for me.
Does any other council member have any questions on the check register?
I make a motion to approve item C.
Second.
Second it.
Okay, roll call, please.
Councilmember Robertson,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Guerra,
Aye.
Councilmember Avalos,
Aye.
Councilmember Trujillo,
Aye.
Mayor Franco.
Aye. We have no public hearing, so we're going to item 2, regular business. Consideration for professional services agreement with Revenue and Cost Specialist LLC for cost allocation and user fee study.
Thank you, Mayor, council members. The item you have in front of you is a professional service contract for revenue and cost specialists. This professional service group that we use has been used in the past for multiple items, the one for this same study back in 2005, but also to develop our development impact fees as well. Normal practice and good practice, I should say, fiscally, is to be able to go through this exercise at least every 5 years. What this does is allow us to establish our user fee structure and how we actually charge those rates out and what that number looks like. As you're all aware, we are a full cost recovery basic service, which basically means when somebody does a service, whether it be the fire department, the planning departments, any other department, we're basically just being able to recover that cost that we've incurred for that service. A good example will be a conditional use permit or something to that extent. Going through a full process, whether it's taken into planning commission and getting approved or taken into council, you want to be able to capture everybody that touched that service, to be able to, whether they touch it for 15 minutes or for a half hour or for an hour or maybe a couple days. You want to be able to get full cost recovery on that. And in addition to that, what you want to be able to do is, if somebody wants to challenge a situation, and if, for example, if you're charging $3,000 for some type of permit or service that the city is providing, you want to be able to give full description and detail on how the city has actually populated that number. In addition to that, you want a professional service group such as cost recovery or revenue and cost specialists to be able to stand by that report that they have generated, to say, here, look, this is how we came with that information. This is a detailed description. This is why we stand by this amount and why we come to this if we're able to charge that amount. Again, this report has not been done for quite a few years, since 2005. I think it's now important, not more than ever, going into the fiscal year that we're about to go into. And the reason I say that is, again, you want to be able to capture every single cost of service that you're able to do. We have been in the finance department adjusting the rate structure and getting it to where we need to be and slightly tweaking it, using our MOU increases as a benchmark to be able to increase those rate structures. But it's really time to be able to give a full scrub and get that report to where it really needs to be. Is there any questions regarding this report or how the process works?
Any questions for council?
Yes.
Go ahead, Jim.
Yeah, Isaac, we're okay. Let me ask you a question. We've been doing this for you've been doing this for a while, trying to capture some losses and restructuring our needs as far as our city, as far as cost-effective ideas and capturing some of our monies. You've been doing it for a while, am I correct? On the
That's
program.
correct. You'll see me come to you every year.
Yeah, you do it every year. You do it every year. I know. I pay attention. You know. The reason I'm asking you this is, you know, I know we're in a pandemic situation right now, and I'm not, you know, not to be, you know, of the situation here. Myself, you know, I like to look at, when we go into our budget meeting, I like to look at these numbers before we start bringing on, you know, specialists, because listen, I've been through it, and I don't want to see anybody. What I'm trying to say is, there might be some layoffs down the road, you know, and I want to make sure that we're going to capture every dollar we can to keep these people working, but at the same time, I'm not going to spend any money until we get the numbers that we need to look at. You know what I mean? You know, there's an old saying. Someone quoted me at the last council meeting: "Can't put the cart before the horse." And I'm seeing this already. The reason I'm telling you this because I've been through this situation already before, so I'm just kind of a little leery of this right now, of this situation, because the pandemic situation that's taking place in the state across this nation right now.
Completely understandable, council member. Thank you for your comment. And I kind of want to just touch base on the same comment that you had. We want to make sure that we're capturing the full cost of recovery of what we're actually generating that. So to be able to make sure that we have that full cost recovery, we need to be able to generate this report and stand by it. So yes, there is an impact to be able to get us to where we need to be, but the level of assurance that you'll get from generating to make sure that we're getting to the point where we're capturing all those revenue streams and that cost recovery. Some of the user fees that we had to switch to a deposit basis and go away from it, because seeing the trends in which it's costing us to do those services, it was better to go to a deposit base because we didn't have a standard report to be able to generate it. Therefore, we're having to track our hours manually and things of that nature, create deposits, request more funds to be able to go and get those services done. This will allow us to shore up what we're charging to make sure we are a full cost recovery, to make sure that when somebody does bring in an application or does those things, that we're recovering that cost that needs to be recovered.
But let me ask another question. Oh,
Sure.
I got a question. Isaac, how much will this, Assistant City Manager Moreno, how much will this put back in the general fund?
That's hard. That's a good point. It'll pit back in the fund. It depends on how the user fee study comes up. I mean, we could be looking at increases across the board of all our user fees potentially, or slights and some decreases, right? So it's hard to say how much we'll actually generate until we go through the process of the study to shore up what our user fees are supposed to be. So
And that's my issue. It's a pretty good chunk of change.
Mhm.
You know, I saw that consent item, the folks that are gonna be taking over from Uni Services, and it's, you know, $1,000, okay. And there's some revenue possibility there. Here, I don't really see a cost benefit justification enough, you know, given that really scary report you just delivered in terms of expenditures and an uncharted future for us, which makes me leery of such a large budget outlay at this point, even though like some of the items we considered at the last meeting, I think overall, you know, in time, it'll be a good investment. But at this point, my priority is to save as much money as possible so that we can keep as many people on city staff as possible to deliver the level of services that our city should be expected to deliver to our citizens of Selma. And 35,000 seems to me just a little bit steep at this point, but something I'd like to see in the future.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, if I might.
Yes, Teresa.
Thank you. I do want to elaborate a little bit more on the comments and questions. This is one thing where there would, I believe, be the cost of recovery, the return on the investment here. I understand that right now there may be a desire to have that more clearly laid out. However, the user fees have not been updated in 15 years, so I feel confident that there will be a return on the investment. This item was budgeted in this fiscal year. I get we need to know what we're going into as well, but typically these types of assessments do provide a return on the investment, and it gives us the ability to recover the costs that do end up keeping people employed. If we are not covering the cost of service completely, and if we're very far behind on that, then additional funds are basically taxpayer funds are then subsidizing some of those services. So important that we do this at some point here sooner than later, since cost recovery is so imperative to our budget.
And I agree with that, but at this point, I think the timing's a little suspect for fiscal year 2021. But I think it's a really worthy endeavor in the future when we have a little more cost certainty.
well, you know,
You just kind of jump onto that, which our city manager is stipulating too. We could go through this process and figure out that we're not charging fees that we should be charging, using the services like this professional services who's done this throughout the state. They know what other cities are charging, how they're doing their infrastructure, their user fee billings, and what that looks like, and saying, hey, well, you should be charging this. This is pretty much the standard now. Why aren't you doing that? So some of that could come out of this transaction as well.
So, you know, I hear you guys, but we can't get into this this mode of overly caution and not position the city in a way to bounce back from this recession that we know that we're going to. I think if you look at the last recession, yes, we did extreme cuts, but we never really positioned the community of Selma to recover from that recession. And if you can even make the argument that we even haven't recovered from the last recession. So I think this cost is budgeted, and I think it's a small investment to pay for potentially a good reward, and it's gonna put us on a good road to recovery. Those are just my thoughts, but I'm going to open it up to the public to see if there's anyone in the public who wants to comment on this, and then I'm gonna bring it back to council. So is there any members of the public who wish to comment on this item?
Hi, caller. I do see that we have one caller on the line. Caller, do you have any questions regarding this agenda item? Your line is unmuted.
Hi, my name is Chu Tai. I am the Vice President of Revenue Cost Specialist, and I'm just on the call, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, well, do you have anything to elaborate before we open up the questions to the council? That you want to elaborate, or everything you heard seems to be appropriate?
Sure, I don't mind. One question that came up is, what's the typical cost recovery? And the amount for neighboring cities about your size, it's been several hundred thousand, 400,000 annually. That's the range we can find, 400,000. Some of the recent studies we've done, Morro Bay is about 500,000, smaller city, same, larger one, Westminster down here in Orange County is 1.2 million. So the finding is significant. A lot of this has to do with city policy though, which means we present the full cost of the service, and it is up to the city council to adopt it. And whether you, like Assistant City Manager Isaac said, what's your policy for full cost recovery? The process does help a lot. As Isaac said, you look at all the fees. Sometimes after 15 years, you don't know if it includes any fees. We also look at the processes as well, and it does help where it's comprehensive. It involves a lot of city staff, and we modify process, work with staff to modify processes, applications to make it more streamlined, make it fit. Because right now, sometimes when fees are too old, it does not work well, and it's hard to charge, and it does not provide a good service as well. So that's some of my thoughts.
Okay. Does any council members have any questions?
I have a question. My question is this something like on the not recovering the correct amount for the roll-off bins from waste management when we had these other businesses using other roll-offs from different companies? So we weren't capturing the correct amount. So is that the same thing that we're talking about here?
No, that the example you're giving really pertains back to a contract with Waste Management and the franchise fee that we currently have with them. How that's based is basically for the service that they provide to the individuals using the service. We have our built-in franchise fee amount that allows us to generate our revenue, or an amount that comes back to the city. When somebody outside comes into our city limits and performs that service that is not self-hauling, that is when we have a loss in a revenue stream. I will say that given what we've been working on, the information we're providing, we are seeing a lot of self-haulers that were generating that type of service.
Okay, so in this case, Isaac, can you give me an example?
Sure. An example of that process would basically be a conditional use permit. The planning department touching the process, city staff commenting on that individual's application and walking them through that process, whether it goes through the planning commission, gets approved, and then the formal documentation is approved and processed out. Another one could be the services that the fire department provides, inspection fees, things of that nature, building inspection fees, building calculations as far as those permit fees and what those will built into amount and how they're built up.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilmember Trujillo had a question.
Go ahead, Councilman Trio.
So I understand, I listen, I'm hearing our council's concern because of the situation we're at. But the fact of the matter, and this is my personal opinion, as you know, I review budgets and stuff, is in these times of crisis, it's more important that we actually analyze our budgets. It's more important to analyze to see what our cost, and I agree with you, Isaac. There are some things, since we have not analyzed our cost, we may be shorting ourselves, and go back with customer service. If we are charging an inadequate amount for, like you stated, our last two that you stated with Councilwoman Guerra. This analysis will give us the actual amount, and we might, and I almost think we are going to gain. Prepare a draft to cost allocations, developing a hourly rate for our people. These are just pluses, and you know, I'll be the first one to say that I said, hey, we're putting the carriage before the horse. But I'll tell you this right now, these are the times where our city needs to have and spend this amount of money to bring in an individual to give our staff. This is a tool. This agency is a tool for our staff. This is not something, this is a tool for our staff. They will be better off with this tool. I consider this company a tool. It's how our staff will use it to be wise. And it sounds like Isaac's been looking at it. I plead to you guys that we should spend this money. I think we'll be more in the green. I think it'll help us. And I just, you know, I feel a little bad because in looking at this, if we would have had it 5-10 years ago, we would have been doing well. But because we have it now and where we're at, but I hope that we could get this in, and I hope we can allocate this. $36,000 is not a lot of money, and comparing to what we've spent before, but this is going to us very, very high. And I hope and I recommend and I thank you guys for bringing this to our council, because this is a tool. This is a tool for our staff, and I hope we can get it done. And that, I would like to make a motion to approve it.
Okay. We have a motion on the floor. Before I go, do we have a second? Is there any more questions from the council members? Okay, with that, do we have a second? I will second that motion. Okay. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Avalos had a question.
Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry, Jim, I didn't see you.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Jim.
I actually, well, I want us to take a little look at it a little longer. Can we table this till next council meeting? Because really, he said something earlier in his comment that when it comes back to us, we will be the policy guys who are making the decision either what to charge and what not to charge. And I rather just maybe, you know, come back next council meeting, and it gave me a more chance to analyze this gentleman's work and other cities, how their operation, what they're doing.
Councilor Robles, just so I can kind of comment to that, please understand that this is a long process. It does take about 6 months. So it would be beneficial for us to kind of get in front of this sooner rather than later. But I do understand what you're asking.
And if I may also interject, Mayor, council members, this company is a reputable firm. They've done this not only in the past here in Selma, but worked with many other cities. And the return on the investment, I'm really glad the consultant was on the line to give a number to that. A $35,000 investment to potentially have $400,000 a year in increased revenue is a good return on the investment. So we went through this.
Do we have that in writing? Excuse me. Do we have that in writing somewhere? Do we get a return and ROI number from our consultant? I don't see it in any of this presentation.
Well, basically what the consultant is giving is his experience when generating this report, what they've seen out there. So there's no contracted threshold that we're going to save you X, Y, or Z. He's basically giving his professional opinion of what he's seen in the market and when he's done these studies. And again, you got to remember this report was last generated in 2005. So I agree that you're definitely going to receive a return here well past that $35,000 that's been requested.
So I'd just like to say a comment. This report will actually give us, they'll be able to break down our usage of our staff on a timely manner. And if our staff right now, even if we were understaffed, this is even better, more of a tool. And if we are in a crisis, this is more of a tool that we use to give to our leaders or department heads and tell them, this is where our numbers are at. This is what we should be cost. He's not going to come and bring us a price. He's going to tell us, this is the amount of usage we've been using. This is the amount of usage we're using here at this per department heads. This is what's costing us. this is what and then we can us together say with our department heads or hopefully with our manager and our finance director, this is what we should be charging. This is what the city really saying, and we'll be able to service our community more, because if we want to be community friendly, we need to know what the adequate price. What if we are undercharging and underservicing our community, or what if we are overcharging? And this tool will be able to do that. And I hope, I just, thank you.
All right, Jim, you had a request to table. I don't know what the 2 weeks is going to personally give you. I just gonna caution you, just as a whole, just because we're in a pandemic,
Okay, let me ask you.
we just can't freeze and put our head in the sand and wait for things to get
I
better.
didn't say put our head in the sand, Louis. All I'm saying is analyze it more and look at our budget a little more closer, because, you know, this is something that's, listen, Franco, I've been through this, and I'm just cautioning the council. You know, I've been through the ugly crisis. When I came on board, within a year, it turned ugly. We had to make some tough decisions. We had to try to make decisions in people's lives and the city's services. You know, until you've been there and understand where you're at, you know, you don't want to go down the same. I've been down that path.
Yeah,
Okay?
I understand that, Jim.
Caution you guys.
I understand that, Jim, but saving $35,000 is not going to give you the luxury of doing that much more in a major financial crisis. But reviewing your
question, Mr.
fees, and
Mayor.
if we get a couple 100,000, we'll. But you got to be able to be willing to move forward on things. This was already planned. It was already budgeted because it's needed. So
I do.
we got a motion to table. I
Yeah.
want to respect, Jim, I want to respect your wishes to table, but at the same time, I don't want to, in the next 3 months, be table every single item because we're in a pandemic and be afraid to govern.
I have a question.
Go ahead, Councilman Robertson. I mean, sorry, Councilman Trio.
This question is for Isaac.
Mhm.
So actually, if let's just say we approve this,
Mhm.
the same would be per year, but this would go on. We could almost, if we wanted to, state that this X amount, this year, 2021, we can have, once we implement it, we could have a savings to 21. We can have a savings in 22. We can have a savings in 23. We can have a savings in 24. And we can have a savings in 25.
Mhm.
So this $35,000 or $36,000 investment could almost come up to being almost $1 million. Is that a fair statement?
That is a fair statement in the essence that, just like I talked about in the 10-year forecast, a prime example is if it costs for just a user fee, let's say $1,000, right? While we come back and do this analysis and saying we're supposed to be charging $1,500, well, one, you built that into that current fiscal year, since we'll be doing it next fiscal year and completing it doing it throughout this fiscal, completing it next fiscal, you could actually see that uptick right away on our next fiscal year where you're seeing that deficit. But you could also turn around and then build it into your model, again, saying that your user fee is X. Well, I know I'm going to do an estimated about 10 a year, build that into your forecast. In addition to that, the new resolution that will be adopted per these revenues or this user fee program will allow us to build in a CPI to uptick those revenue streams on an annual basis. Again, building that into our forecast.
And we could use that tool.
Yeah.
We could use that tool to increase our fees in the future and justify them because we have the tools stating city staff is being absorbed.
Correct.
Used.
It would be my practice to be fiscally responsible, to be able to try and do this report every 5 years and not every 15 or so. So it is some item that I would like to continuously get to, because it needs to be assessed on a 5-year basis, because laws change, staff changes. We could add.
Isaac, could we do it every could we do it every 2 to 3 years? Maybe just like a salt.
Okay, why do we want to spend $35,000 every 2 years? I mean,
We're not, I'm
let's
not
get
saying,
back
I'm
to
saying,
the,
I'm,
let's
I'm
get
saying,
back
wait a
to
minute,
some
I'm
fiscal
talking to Isaac.
responsibility here.
doing-
Hold on,
I'm doing
Scott,
Isaac.
you can share your comment.
I raised my hand and I haven't talked in a
I'm
while.
sorry, I didn't.
My point
You
is
weren't visible.
$35,000 is what this costs. We don't have the money right now. I'm all for the
It's
study. I
budgeted,
think
it's
it's a good thing,
budgeted, it's
It's
budgeted.
budgeted.
but every
It's
2 years,
budgeted.
no.
No,
Every 2 years,
you
maybe.
guys are getting off the subject. He was just asking a hypothetical question. We're getting off the subject. We're just
Wait a
talking
minute,
about.
Mr. Mayor,
one
let me
fee.
clarify my question with our finance director that does work with our financing. What I was stating is, he was saying that he would implement it during, and rather than doing it every 5 years, he could do his own financial outlook and tell us what he's doing, and he could
Thank
actually.
you for that clarification. That would save the city a lot of money. That's what I like to hear. Saving.
Continue, John. Continue, John.
So last week we tabled an item that was gonna bring a joint agreement between all the cities that would help our community. Now we're gonna table an item that would probably save us probably hundreds of thousands of dollars for no justification. And this is a budgeted item that we're gonna table. That's where we're at.
So let continue. Are you done with your comments, John?
Yes, I'm done.
Okay. All right, I'm gonna. Is there any more comments for council on this matter? Okay. So we have a motion and we have a requested table. Neil? Can you hear me, Neil? I can't hear you. I think. City
Can you hear
Attorney
me now?
Costanza? I can hear you now.
Okay. I believe
Neil.
you had a motion and a second for approval of the item,
Right.
and that's when the request to table it was raised. I didn't see a second for the table motion. So you can proceed any way you want.
Okay.
You solicit a second for that tabling motion.
Right.
Or you can simply ask for a roll call vote on the motion that Councilmember Trujillo made.
All right. Thank you, Neil, for the clarification. Listen, guys. I know we're running into some tough times ahead, and we are going to make tough decisions moving forward. But at the same time, we have to position our community to be in the best foot to recover and to get through this. Now, this is a budgeted item. It's something that is past due, and it's something that makes sense. So I'm gonna not ask for a second on the table on this matter, and I'm gonna move forward with the roll call vote. And I'm hoping that you guys just give it a chance and support this item. So with that, can I get a roll call, please?
Councilmember Trujillo,
Aye.
Mayor Franco,
Aye.
Councilmember Avalos,
No, I caution you guys.
Councilmember Robertson,
I'm gonna vote yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Guerra.
Yes.
Thank you, Council.
All right. Motion passes. Thank you, council. With that, we're gonna move on to second item, regular business. I'm sorry, item 3 on regular business. Consideration of a construction of a median island and paving improvements to Highland Avenue between Aaron Street and Rose Avenue in connection with the construction of a new facility for auto body repair and car sales. And I believe this is City Manager Gallivan.
Thank you, Mayor, council members. On this item, we're asking that council consider authorizing staff to negotiate a development agreement contingent upon the developer creating an auto body repair and car sales commercial development. And that the city would utilize Measure C or other street funds to do the necessary median, island, and paving improvements to Highland Avenue between Arantz and Rose Avenue. So Mr. Nelson had proposed a construction of a Caliber Collision National Auto Body Repair Company to also include used car sales at the location outlined here on Rose and Highland. And Caltrans does require roadway improvements, including the construction of a median and turn lanes from Rose and Arantz Street to prevent traffic conflicts from turning movements across the highway. The cost associated with the construction of the median island is a burden on the project, according to Mr. Nelson, and makes it unfeasible to move forward. The median island, as we said, is a necessary improvement for public safety. And to allow development to occur in this critical business corridor, the city could consider using its Measure C funds and street funds in order to facilitate development. The developer, though, would still be required to do among other conditions, the developer would be required by city ordinance to construct curb, gutter, and landscape strip and sidewalk along the project frontage. And this is a requirement of the Selma Municipal Code. This is something that has been of concern to the developer, but those are our municipal code requirements. All other developments do put those improvements in themselves as well. But the city can make a public benefit nexus to the median and the highway paving and turn lane improvements. So we're presenting this option to the council to consider this as a way to facilitate development if indeed the developer would commit to bringing the Caliber Collision and Auto Sales project forward. Currently, the developer has a solar farm proposed for both of those properties, for this property, but has brought up at times that an auto repair and auto sales shop would obviously be a higher, better use for that frontage along the highway, for sales tax and for job creation, which we acknowledge, and therefore this is why we're bringing this proposal to you. The approximate cost, the engineers have come up with an approximate cost of $200,000 to $250,000 that would come out of, if council wants to move forward with this, and the developer does as well. If the developer does, then it would come out of either Measure C or city street funds. In order to move forward with something like that, Mr. Nelson would have to accept in the terms and conditions, and again, including timing and delivery of the project, and a development agreement would outline such a thing. And I'd like to ask the city attorney to expand upon the process for negotiating the development agreement and any additional information in regard to the requirements as outlined.
Yes, well, we would simply just,
Excuse me, sorry, my apologies for interrupting. I know this is unorthodox, but I need to schedule a quick 3-minute break intervention at this moment. My apologies for everybody on the line, but I'm having a technical difficulty that I need to address. So if we could just go to break for 3 minutes, is that okay?
That's fine.
Okay. All right. So we're going to take a 3-minute break and we will come back.
Okay.
Thank you.
While the city council is on a quick break, I am just going to confirm that the audio is that those people on the call can hear. So, Kira, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Perfect, thank you. I do see various names from the Nelson side, and I'm just going to unmute you just to make sure that you can hear me just fine. And I can
Hold on.
hear you okay. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. I'm not sure if you have video capabilities and if you want to show those, or if you want to just come over as audio. Either way you feel comfortable. I do see 1, 2, 3, 3 Nelson lines.
Where? Oh my God. Amber Nelson. City Clerk, can you hear me?
I can.
Are the other council members back?
I just only see one other council member back.
Okay. I can't see them on my current screen, so would you just let me know when they're all back so we could resume?
Absolutely.
Okay, I'm back, Louis.
Okay, Jim, we're waiting on 3 more.
Okay.
Actually, we're just waiting on Council Member Trujillo.
Jerry is right there.
Sorry.
It's okay.
Okay. All right. We're gonna reconvene our meeting. Is staff back?
Yes.
Okay. We're gonna reconvene our meeting. Once again, my apologies for that, for the interruption during the thing. Mr. Costanza, you can go ahead with your portion.
On what kind of a development agreement that you would require. And simply put, you would require the development of the parcel as a caliber collision with the associated auto sales. You would require the necessary plans for that development to be submitted, and would require the developer to commit to a particular timeline. And in exchange, we would be putting in the various street improvements, which are a public improvement, the median and the turn lanes for the left turn traffic onto Arentz and Rose.
Hey, Neil, I got a question.
Yes.
Have we looked, or I don't know, maybe I'm getting ahead of it. Have we looked to see if there's gonna be any sales tax or any cost, or any revenue from that facility?
Well, you do generate some sales tax revenue from that facility. I believe they charge you sales tax on the parts that they put on your car when they repair it. Sales tax would not be extremely high for that particular development. but it would bring in people presumably from out of town to what is a nationally recognized auto body shop that has a lot of insurance companies presumably directing people to that shop.
Has
He
he
also-
specified how many people he'll be hiring?
He has not, but that is something we could inquire about and obtain a commitment for in a development agreement. He's also got a proposal to include associated used car sales. And that, of course, generates sales tax revenues. The development would greatly enhance your property tax revenues on that particular parcel, as opposed to what he was proposing in the alternative, which is a solar farm, which would generate very little in either property tax and nothing in sales tax.
Very true.
Before I open it to the public, is there any other staff that has, any other council members that have questions for staff?
I have a question.
Go ahead, Sarah.
This Measure C fund, it shows a balance of 1,143,871. My question is this the balance after Floral and Nebraska projects have been completed, or do they still need to subtract those two projects from this balance?
Mayor Pro Tem, I can answer that question. The balance that you're looking at was as of when I pulled the information from our accounting system. It is not compensating for Floral Avenue or the Nebraska project, but those are both grant funded projects, so will not be coming out of this fund itself. The one item that would come out of this measure is some of the street improvements as far as our streets fund, Fund 210. So a couple $100,000 as on average each year to help assist with labor for street projects itself. But no, not the Floral Avenue. Those large projects are funded by grants already and have identified funding sources.
This is Scott.
We get on an annual basis, how much from Measure C? A couple hundred?
There's different, it's a couple hundred for one of the items. There's different increments and how we get the money and how you could utilize the funds. Overall, more like 500,000, I would say. We do get an amount. There's a flex, there's a maintenance, there's an ADA component. They're all different components. Where this one utilized would be either the maintenance component, which is how we actually funded the Floral Avenue project last time, or under the flex component.
And how much of that 1.1 million is street funds as opposed to Measure C?
The 1.1 is identified just for the Measure C fund itself, not other street funds. Well, what I'm saying is the transfer would be done at the end of the fiscal to cover some of the labor that happens in Fund 210. And that would be 100,000.
I did have another question.
Sure.
Who's going to be responsible for it?
As far as the maintenance?
For maintaining it? Yes.
Just like any other street improvement project that is done by a developer, they do turn over that asset to the city. So it'd be up to us to maintain that median.
And it would be a city project.
Excuse me, is that Highway 43?
It is.
Scott, you're muted. Go ahead, Scott.
Is that Highway 43 where
It
this
It is.
constructed? And
Yes,
is that a City of Selma responsibility, or is that Caltrans responsibility? Since it's a highway.
It is still seen as a city property. We would have to go out to Caltrans and get their approval for this type of project, though.
Would there be any Caltrans money that we could ask for, like shop money, safety money, since it's clearly a safety issue, so that people don't turn into oncoming traffic to get to the body shop?
The one thing that Caltrans does to be able to assess projects like this is look at potential impacts that are there as a safety factor now. Because of the way it is currently now, with no projects offsetting into this side, it's not the project they currently have on their scope overall. they would have to do another measurement to be able to justify that type of improvement. I will say that as part of this project, it has been sent to them, and this is one of the requirements that they're actually requiring.
Yep. And Isaac, we currently maintain the street already, right? This is just adding a medium to put in a dedicated turn lane in and out, correct?
That is correct.
So, all right. If there's not any questions, I'm going to open it up to the public.
Thank you.
Okay. Good. City Clerk, do we have anybody from the public wishing to comment on this item?
I do see that we have a number of people from the Nelson side. I have unmuted on all of your lines. Please let me know if you have any questions or concerns that you'd like to bring forward. I do not see them.
No. I hope they, well, we'll give them one. All right, last call. Anyone from the public wishing to talk? All right, well, we're gonna go bring it back to council, and Raina, if they call back in, just let me know. So. Okay. So if I understand this correctly, Isaac, this is just improving the safety on the street that we have the funds for. That will also help spur development on 43, but we're just talking about doing the streets only, right?
That is correct. This is seen as a safety improvement project for that area.
Okay, and that's all this, that's all this resolution or this action does? There's no other binding things to it?
Well, it's having the conversation about being able to allocate those funds to that portion of the project. Also is discussing development impact, development agreements to kind of be a caveat to that improvement if this project goes forward.
Yeah, what we're looking for, Mayor and council members, is if you would authorize us to negotiate a development agreement with the Nelson regarding them bringing an auto body and used car sales lot there, and we would do these improvements that would otherwise be required of them for this project.
Okay. All right.
It would have to
Thank
be
you,
negotiated. We don't know if you would accept the terms, but this is something we would like to know if you would support us.
But this is just a go into negotiations, not the actual terms of that agreement, correct? Okay. All right. Does council have any other questions for staff?
Yeah, I have a question. Why is
Okay.
Mr. Nelson not contributing to the construction of the median? Is he going to be constructing the curb and gutter?
He's going to be constructing the sidewalks, curb and gutter because that's required by our ordinances. He's not contributing to the street improvement because it's really just a public improvement that is necessary for safety. This particular development is the one gap on that side of the street that's not developed. And it's kind of the trip that triggers Caltrans's requirement for installation of those safety improvements. So it's not really caused by his development. It's more a function of the way in which the property has developed around this particular parcel.
Can the agreement be contingent on, can the construction of the median be contingent on the construction of Caliber and a certain amount of time in operation before the median would be constructed? Or would Caltrans say, sorry, if he's putting that in, you have to put the median in?
But Caltrans has reviewed this particular proposal specifically, and that is a condition of this development. So he would have to commit to bringing in the Caliber collision, bringing in the used car sales on that parcel. And if he were to commit to that, we would in turn develop the streets, but the development of both of these would likely occur fairly simultaneously.
And if he would decide not to bring in Caliber because of the state of the economy, and we put in the median, what happens then? What is the city's remedy?
Well, you could build in any kind of remedy that you want relative to that into your development agreement. The obligation of the city would be contingent upon him bringing that particular development to that site. And if he did not do it, did not commence the development when it's required to be commenced, we would not undertake the street improvements.
Okay. Neil, I have a question, or Teresa. The 200,000, the cost, is that for the medium only?
That's for a median and I believe 2 left-hand turn pockets.
And paving up to the necessary improvements of the curb gutter landscape strip and those frontage improvements that the developer would have to do on Highland and on Rose.
Okay, and then what's the timeline?
That has yet to be determined. This is basically a proposal we were making to him in order to encourage the development of this particular parcel with the Caliber collision as opposed to a solar plant. And we are simply looking to you to be able to eliminate the condition that we've always placed on this offer, and that is that it has to be approved by you first. So by approving this particular item, you're just allowing us to go back to him and say, if you will commit to bringing in the Caliber collision, we will do the street improvements.
Okay.
And if there's no commitment, then the street improvement stays as is.
Correct.
Okay.
I got another question. What kind of precedent does this set up for other developers who want the city to put in road developments in the future? Does it set a precedent?
It does not, because it's not really a street improvement that is triggered by this particular development. It's more a function of what has gone on around this property in the past and a desire to protect the incoming traffic from the residential area that is on the other side of the street.
Yeah, if I could weigh in, typically median type improvements would be a reimbursable item through impact fees. This particular piece is not in our fee program, so would not be subject to impact fee reimbursement. But median islands and center travel lanes are typically a reimbursable item that's paid for through impact fees. So in another location, if it were in our impact fee program, in that program, the developer would be subject to reimbursement for this type of work anyway. So I really don't see it as a precedent issue because it's typically not the responsibility other than to construct it, but not to pay for it for a development.
Yeah,
and
I'm sorry, go ahead.
And I was just going to follow up to Mayor Pro Tem's question on the costs. The $200,000 to $250,000 covers the construction costs for the median island, for concrete flat work in that median island to finish it so that it's not a weeded up mess. It will do all the infill paving between the developer's work and the current edge of pavement, as well as striping, traffic control and such. I do have contingency dollars built into that, as well as costs for engineering fees to get this thing. It's basically a turnkey number for all of the work.
I have a question.
Go ahead, John.
So we're looking either, so what we're looking at is Mr. Nelson either brings a solar farm or I guess a auto repair shop with the sales that's going to give us some money. And at the same time, we're going to be clearing out this blighted area. It sounds positive to me. And
that is the choice, yes.
So, and what we're asking is just to vote to give you the direction to go and have a discussion with Mr. Nelson. We're not approving anything.
That is correct. And the one thing that we were trying to guard against relative to setting precedents was not paying for the street or the sidewalks, curb and gutter, because that is something every developer
Once.
is required to pay himself pursuant to our existing ordinances.
Okay. Sounds good to me. Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion if I could.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second? Okay, I will make the second.
I'd like to open it up since there's a second. I'd like to add something. If this
Okay.
is an authorization to go into negotiations, I'd like to see a business plan, and I'd like to see what we've heard tonight. You know, what are the jobs that are going to be created? What's the revenues? What's the payroll? I'd like to know more about the project too before we actually finally approve this. And then also I'd like to know that if it doesn't turn out to be a body shop, that curb and gutter will still be taken care of by the developer per the ordinance.
Even if he is even if he's going to build a solar farm,
yeah,
we require the curbs and gutters and sidewalks.
Okay.
We can certainly solicit from him the business plan, the expectations as to what the overall development will look like. In fact, that's part of the whole process, and what types of job creation we're looking at with bringing in a caliber collision.
So Neil, I have a question. Will the business outline come back to council?
Everything would come back to council. All we're doing is we're asking for a little bit of leeway so we can essentially dangle this carrot in front of Mr. Nelson to entice him to develop the property in the manner that we want to see it developed, as opposed to a solar farm. Before any deal is made, you guys will get the opportunity to sign off on and approve a development agreement that specifies everything he's required to do in minute detail, and what the ultimate development is going to yield for the city in terms of things like job creation and the overall value of the development in terms of property tax and what it's expected to generate in terms of sales tax revenue.
So this agreement isn't final. This is just to authorize you to go into negotiations and develop a development agreement, and then which would be subject to council approval in the future. Is that correct?
That is absolutely correct.
Okay.
Okay, are you satisfied with all that, Scott?
I'm ready to vote.
Okay, roll call, please.
I do see that we have someone from the Nelson side on the line, and it looks like they're asking to speak.
Okay, with that, I'm gonna hold off on the vote, and we're gonna return it back to the public for comment. Go ahead and speak.
Hi, caller. I do see that you're on the line. Oh,
She shows muted.
yeah, I'm trying to unmute. And hi, caller. Did you have anything that you'd like to discuss?
Okay.
Okay. Did you want me to go ahead and call roll?
Yes, we're gonna return it back to council, and we're gonna proceed with roll call.
Councilmember Trujillo?
Aye.
Councilmember Franco? I'm sorry, Mayor
Aye.
Franco?
Aye.
Councilmember Avalos?
Aye.
Councilmember Robertson?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Guerra?
Aye.
All right. Thank you. And Okay. With that, we're going to our last item of regular business, item 4. Consideration of a resolution amending Exhibit F to amend and restate solid waste and recycle franchise agreement for solid waste collection, green waste collection, and recycling services to include short-term and special bins and charges for identifying size bins and approving and authorizing issuance of a notice to residential and commercial customers of a rate increase in accordance with Proposition 218. City Manager?
Thank you, Mayor, council members. We are recommending that council adopt this resolution amending Exhibit F to the city's franchise agreement with Waste Management, and that you approve and authorize the issuance of notices of residential and commercial customer rate increases in accordance with Proposition 218. At our last meeting, the council approved the annual CPI, Consumer Price Index increase for waste management services to our residents. And they also at that time approached us with a special interim rate increase. You all directed staff to negotiate the amount of a special interim rate increase. And we met with waste management representatives and arrived at a tentative agreement. The special interim rate increase would need to be ratified by council. The contract Waste Management shared with us and showed us justification and proof of the increased costs they are incurring to have recycled materials collected. And that is an increase of $40 per ton. And with that justification, that leads to a special interim rate increase of 3.42%. Our contract does prescribe how that is looked at. And those rates were, again, they provided the justification for that rate increase. The other thing we discussed was that they are sharing, they put on the rate different fees for different size bins that they provide. Those are not new fees. I want to correct the last time I spoke at the last meeting, I thought that those were new fees. They are not new fees. They are just a clarification of statement of different size bins and what they cost as basically transparency to the customer. So those bin charges are also part of the rate schedule update. And then the third thing that we discussed with Waste Management was that we tentatively agreed to meet in September and discuss and negotiate potential new terms for an amended agreement with council's approval, of course. Waste Management has another methodology that is used successfully in other cities for rate adjustments, and I would like to share with us how that works. And the city attorney is familiar with that process. And Waste Management would like to provide additional information to us to see if that would be a benefit to Selma customers. So we're open to discussing that with them in the future. And that was those were the 3 items that we discussed and tentatively agreed upon and would like your consideration of. City Attorney, was there any additional information that?
I think you've covered it. Essentially, your recyclables used to be sold to China and they used to make money off of them. Now they no longer make any money because China stopped accepting them. And they are charged for the processing of those recyclable materials by a third party. And we verified that cost. They were asking for a 5.83% increase for this special interim rate increase. We've negotiated that down to 3.42%, basically by eliminating the loss of revenue that they're experiencing and covering only the cost that they're experiencing.
Okay. Before I open it up, does council, any member of council have questions for staff? Okay, is there anybody from the public who wish to comment on this item? right now.
I do see that we have two folks from Waste Management, and I just would like to open that matter up to the two people that we have from Waste Management and ask them if they'd like to comment on the item.
Is there any staff, do you have comments or questions for anybody from staff or Waste Management? I can't see. Seeing none? Okay, go ahead, Jim.
Yeah, okay, waste management. Okay.
Yes,
Now these costs that we're talking about, just the recovery cost. Am I correct, Liz?
that's correct. It's recovering the costs already paid by Waste Management to process the material we've collected from the City of Selma.
And, okay, and if we don't go back in the past, it starts now, right? Am I correct?
Okay, in what we're discussing and what's presented tonight, it would be the ability to help us on an going forward basis. When we come back and we discuss and negotiate with the council how to change the methodology, that past recovery would also be part of those discussions.
Okay. All right.
The past costs.
Okay,
The cost, the percentage increase that you're approving by adopting the resolution is actually just approving a issuance of a Proposition 218 notice.
Okay.
So that you can do that later in July. But basically all this covers is their increased cost on a going forward basis. We're going to talk about the costs that they've incurred in 2018 and 2019 in connection with our discussion of changing the methodology to one that basically just takes into account their increase or decrease in cost in setting the rates annually. And that will alleviate any need to go through that Proposition 218 process again.
Oh, okay. So we're basically we're setting a plan for the future for waste management and people we actually do business with, basically.
That is correct.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Also, if I may, I do have my boss, Sandra Pursley, on the call with us this evening. She was part of the negotiations and discussions with the city. She is the regional municipal contract manager for the area, and part of her responsibility is the Central Valley. So, hi, Sandra.
Hey, guys.
Hello.
Pleasure to meet you, Sandra.
Nice to see all of you.
Yeah.
Sandra, do you have anything you want to share on this, or is it everything has basically been covered?
Everything's covered. Thank you so much for your consideration and for your guidance on working with staff. I think we had a really fruitful discussion. There was compromise on both sides, and we look forward to sitting down in September. I think that the future planning will create a lot of transparency and predictability and stability in services for your constituents, which I think is what you had hoped for when you directed us to sit down and talk. And Isaac and Teresa and Neil were fantastic. They met with us right away, and we're very satisfied and looking forward to the future. So thank you.
All right. Okay. With that, I'm going to bring it back to council. And do we have any further comments, or I will ask for a motion?
I'll make a motion to accept.
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second, first and second. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Avalos,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Guerra,
Aye.
Councilmember Trujillo,
Aye.
Councilmember Robertson,
Aye.
Mayor Franco.
Aye. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very
All
much.
right. Okay, and that concludes our regular item agendas, and we're going to move on to our departmental reports. City Manager.
Yes, thank you, Mayor, council members. The governor has indicated that we may be moving into phase 2 of the COVID pandemic responses here, maybe even as soon as later this week. So we are staying tuned to that. It also would be contingent on the county also giving direction. So we are staying on top of that so that we can alert our community of any changes that may be coming forward in the next week. So that's one note. And then on another, the Great Plates program, I wanted to provide you a little update on that. That is the state program by which restaurants would be paid to provide meals to seniors and delivered to seniors. So that is something that we are watching very closely as the guidelines unfold for that. We did submit a letter of interest, which was due today, to either join with the county on that or to spearhead our own. What we want to see is what the county, how they intend to roll it out, if they're taking a part in this, and then that will help us determine what would be the best fit to make sure that our residents are best served with this program and the program that we are currently doing. The Great Plates program serves middle income residents. The program we currently have also serves low income residents. So there's a possibility that we could use the two to complement one another and provide a greater service than we would if we just went with the Great Plates. This week, our EDC and our economic development analyst and the chamber will be coordinating to send out information to restaurants, as we have received information and are continuing to receive information about how restaurants can indicate that they want to participate in this program. There's a portal that they go on to and start that process. We also have received information on surveying seniors as to participate in Great Plates. They do have to complete a survey letting people know about their income qualifications and things like that. So we will be getting that survey information out to seniors via our lunch delivery program, as that's a great way to put this information into people's hands. So that also will be happening this week. That's my report. Thank you. Oh.
Teresa,
Go ahead, Jim.
On these guidelines for these restaurants, everything, are we going to notify the people in our community restaurants how to set the guidelines up?
We will be getting information to Selma City restaurants, absolutely, so that they can decide if they want to participate and how they go about indicating they want to participate. So they get that information. So that is what we're going to work on this week.
Yeah, because I'll be honest with you, Teresa, I think everybody wants to get back to normal, but also they want to be safe as well.
Absolutely. I'm sure there'll be some distancing guidelines as well as other protocols as we go into this next phase.
Thank you.
Is that it, City Manager?
Yes, thank you, Mayor.
Okay. City Attorney, anything to report?
Yes, Mayor, just a preview of potential coming attractions. Back in October, the council considered but failed to pass a resolution that would have placed on the ballot dividing the council into 5 districts instead of 4 with the elected mayor. But there was a consensus at the end of that discussion to bring that back for placement on the November 2020 ballot. So I think I indicated back at the time that I would likely be bringing that back in June so that you safely make the deadline, which is the first week of August. And I'm just checking to see that that is still the council's wishes, and unless I hear an objection, that's what will happen at your first meeting in June.
All right, well, thank you.
The other thing along those same lines, I was speaking with Nelson's attorney relative to the item 3 that you approved, and he requested that I relay to you Mr. Nelson's request that he wishes to try again on his card room ordinance and is looking to have the council potentially adopt a resolution again, placing that on the ballot this time for the November 2020 election, at which point he believes his chances of succeeding may be better in the general election than they were in the primary election. He would, of course, be responsible for payment of all costs incurred by the council in processing of that resolution or the ballot measure, and for the cost of that election on that ballot measure. So I was just looking to see if council has any particular view as to whether or not.
Neil, has he reimbursed us for the last election agreement?
I don't know. I believe he has.
Okay.
If I may, we have not at this time received the invoice from Fresno County. I did speak with Brandy Orth about 2 weeks ago, and she did say that they were a bit behind with what was with invoicing, but generally they invoice about 6 to 8 weeks after the election. So he has not indeed paid for it because he has not been invoiced because we have not received it. Thank you.
Okay. Well, I guess it doesn't hurt to have it as a discussion item early so we can put it on.
Yeah, the alternative is he has to go and do a petition, which, you know, lessens your control over what gets on the ballot.
Right. Anything else, Neil?
That is it.
Right. Assistant City Manager, Finance Director Moreno.
Thank you, Mayor, Council Member. At this time, I'll go ahead and give you another presentation, my final one for today. And we'll be looking at our third quarter budget update for this fiscal year. Give it a moment to load here. So like normal from our normal quarterly budget presentations, we'll be looking at the general fund as well as Measure S and the enterprise funds as well. For the general fund, we'll be looking at budget versus actual, as well as some key factor revenue streams and expenditures to kind of discuss where those are looking at and how they're going. Measure S, same thing. Enterprise funds, we'll look at budget versus actual to kind of give you a benchmark at where we're at the end of the third quarter. Next slide, please. So as of the fiscal year 1920, as you're well aware, the total budget for that fiscal is 16 million. So just as an estimate at the third quarter, you're looking at a $12 million budget at this time. Some revenues and expenditures are estimated. Taxes, franchise fees, and professional services are actually calculated and estimated to compensate to where we're supposed to be at that point in time. Next slide, please. So looking at our revenue projections, our estimates for this budget, we're projected at 75% to be at 12 point, our budget impact right now is at 12. Budget is 12 million. Our actual is supposed to be is currently at 11 million point two with a variance of 819,000. That's about 70% of revenue stream. Again, a lot of this is built into estimates. We have the full increment or the next increment of property taxes estimated still because we don't get it till April, which we've already received. Some of the key factors there for our revenues is police operations already at 90%, Department 000 at 69%, which is not bad for considering where we're at in this period. And you can see building is already met expectations of 107%. For revenue stream. Next slide, please. So again, budget estimate, because we did have a projected balanced budget of $12 million, actual expenditures 10.8 with a variance of 1.1. Some of the main key factors in there are fire operations, their total expenditures at 67%, and police operations at 72. As you're aware, those are some of our largest departments, so it is good to see them under our projected, our benchmark of 75% with the overall expenditures at total of 68% projected. Next point, please. Thank you, Raina. So that'll give you a total net gain of a projected of 375,000 within the general fund. Is there any questions before I move on to the other funds regarding the
Can we
general?
get this emailed to us, Isaac? This
Sure.
report?
I'll
Thank you.
email it out to you after or tomorrow.
Thanks.
Okay. Any further questions on the general fund before I move on? Okay, next slide, please. So this will move us into the Measure S department, or fund, should I say. So budgeted revenues, taking 75% of our projected revenue. Our budgeted amount of revenue is 1.3, actual 1.5, with a variance of 152,000. As far as expenditures, again, just majority of the expenditures that are in Measure S are basically labor, some components of professional services and equipment and things of that nature as well. So budget is a 1.3. Actual is 1.2 with a variance of 46,000. Next point, please. That'll leave us with a positive gain of 247,000 in the general, or in the Measure S fund at this point in time, at the end of the third quarter. So go ahead and move on to the next slide. That will then take us on to the enterprise funds. Next slide, please. We're going to start with the ambulance fund. So the projected budget for the ambulance fund for revenue streams of 3.1, or actual at that point in time for that marker was 2.7, with a variance of 398,000. IGT is estimated at 75%. I will say that we did receive the IGT, at least one of the payments, which is a smaller payment, but it is looking to be on budget marker so far. That was received last week, so we're still waiting for the larger one that comes from Calviva. So I can update you once we receive that increment to make sure that we are balancing within the general fund as of our projected revenue stream. Our budgeted amount of 2.8, our actual of 2.6 for expenditures, the variance of 211,000 with a net gain of 88,000 for the bottom line of that quarter. That does compensate for the transfer through the general fund as well. That is factored into this, as well as it's also already projected into it the budget impacts that had already occurred through the budget amendment process that you did for the ambulance fund, so that we continue to bring back in that service under the umbrella of the city. Next slide, please. That takes us to the Pioneer Village, where the current budget are at the 75% marker of 33,000, with actual revenue streams of 42,000, with a variance of 8,000. Budgeted expenditures at 67, actuals at 57,000, and a variance of 9,000 for the expenditures, with a net loss of $15,000. Which pretty typical for the Pioneer Village. They are going through their reserves at this time, which is expected of them. And we'll continue to have that conversation of what the Pioneer Village looks like as we go through the budget process. Next slide, please. That would take us into the transit. Again, the transit does have a transfer into the general fund, which is compensated within this projection. So the budgeted revenue at 75% is 829,000. Actual 827. So we're on point with a variance of 2,000. Budgeted expenditure 714 with an actual of 666,000 with a variance of 47,000. One caveat to understand regarding the budget amount for expenditures is we're budgeting the kind of parts and things of that nature. We're using a factor of what we think it's going to be, what I've seen historically so far, but just with a refresher, that is totally built out. So a variance within the actual for the experiences is going to be common. The main thing to be compensating and looking at the overall growth of this fund is be looking at the net overall gain, which we are projecting at 135,000. Again, already compensating for 75% of the transfer into the general fund. Next slide, please. The next fund that we'll be looking at is cultural arts. It's going to be our last one as well. Looking at total revenue, we're budgeted at 100,000. Actual to date is 157, with a variance of 57,000. So they are well above what their projected budget was currently for revenue streams. Their budgeted amount for the expenditures is 117,000. Actual 151. So you have a variance of 44,000 there. They do have a small net loss of 3,984,000, which if you can remember from the last quarterly update I gave to them, that is making a good stride that they're actually making their way to where they need to be as a positive cash flow. And that concludes my presentation. Is there any questions from council?
Isaac, I have a question.
Sure.
On the Pioneer Village, why do they have a loss?
Pioneer Village itself is not overall a large revenue stream that makes a lot of generated revenue per se. They are having some issues as far as chewing through their expenditures, but they also had some capital expenditures that are offsetting that. So you are going to see a net loss in that projected fund. The biggest expense they have currently is going to be for the maintenance upkeep. That we do a transfer to offset the expenditures for public works. That alone is $30,000. So if you look at their revenue from actual date, so they've received 42,000. They're just compensating just for that. So there is other expenditures like internal services and stuff allocations that they need to compensate for.
Okay.
Is there
I have a question. What, how far are these numbers behind real time? This is the third quarter. How much do these numbers take account of what we're going through right now with COVID-19?
Well, as a sales tax projection marker, you're not going to feel the impact. So for example, if we're talking about March sales, what happened as far as sales tax generation, you're not going to feel those impacts until 2 months out, because that's when we actually receive the funds for that month. So we are going to be on a delay part to be able to see the impacts of the sales tax ramifications. You are going to have also some additions to that, some late impacts due to the TOT, the hotel tax. So that'll be felt in the final quarter. But these are projections that are built up to that quarter. The decreases that you're going to see, as you're well aware, we really didn't see the impacts of COVID until mid-March. So you might feel a slight pinch, but you're really not going to see those impacts until the next quarter.
So we'll be really forced to take a look at the impacts to budget for the next year's budget. Is that right? That's when we're really going to feel the impact.
Correct. The biggest thing to think about when you're coming into the next budget is how we're projecting our revenue streams, because it all depends on when the state, or how we as the council says at least, allows to go back into the full swing of things on what that looks like, right? So we are projected this time in the states, they're having conversations in maybe a couple of months to be able to allow it to open up, and some restrictions and things of that nature. So that's really going to set the tone for our revenue streams. Once you can start getting people back into hotels to compensate back for that TOT. During the budget process, we are going to compensate for that. So we'll talk again more about that in the budget process, but you will start feeling it more in the next fiscal than this fiscal impact right now.
Okay. Is that it for this, Isaac?
That is it for my budget presentation. I do want to make one final remark. We have received the final increments for the general obligation bond for the police station. So we'll be scheduling that meeting, which we received last week. So we're starting to schedule that meeting for the Measure P, to have that final meeting, to have that conversation, so we can get them where they need to be.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council.
Okay, Public Works, do you have anything to report? No Public Works today?
I'm trying to. You guys hear me?
Oh, there you are, Shane. We see you and hear you.
Okay. Mr. Mayor, members of council, thank you very much. Tomorrow, we're going to be moving forward with our second round of sidewalk repairs downtown. It'll begin tomorrow. It'll end on Friday the 8th. I personally visited all the businesses and merchants in the areas of scheduled repairs, dropped off letters explaining what's going to be done, where it's going to be done, and when it's going to be done. I received the full report from Precision Concrete, who did the repairs the first round, and I'll be happy to share that with anybody, all of you as well. With the assistance of Gateway, we've done two repairs on our storm drain system recently. They were kind of our high priority areas, if you will. That's going to help us out in the future. We completed the removal of the wood chips on the southern end of town that I inherited when I became director. We will now head to the north end of town and continue chipping away at the wood piles. We plan to move forward with the Tucker Street one-way transformation. I've been working with Gateway, Joey and Dan, and we got all our ducks in a row and we're ready to move forward with that. So that'll happen and we'll have it done by the next time I see you guys at council meeting. We continue to team up with and address the homeless issues that we have in the Blythe in town with code enforcement, fire department, the rehabilitation resources that we have, PD, and everyone involved. It's a team effort, and I truly feel like we're making progress on this issue as a team. I've submitted a list of the lights that we have retrofitted to LEDs ourselves in-house since the initial proposal from NG, and I'm happy to say that we have upgraded 93 of our Hollywood lights and candlestick lights, which are the decorative poles that are downtown, the black poles we see downtown. And we have retrofitted 213 other lights in various places, such as traffic signals, street lights, senior center, city hall, et cetera, et cetera. And we continue to do our daily assignments and maintenance as always. We are mowing 90 plus acres at this time, once a week. So it's a busy season for us. And that's all I have from Public Works. Thank you.
Okay. Fire Chief.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. We just wrapped up our first month of bringing back EMS transport services. So I'd like to give you a quick report on that. So back in March, we were still turning over about 25% of our call volume was going to outside agencies. In April, we started up our ambulance, which is the third ambulance that we're bringing into our services. For the month of April, we're less than 10%. So that's really good news there. Cautionary side of things, the system, the call volume within the entire system has dropped some. Basically, what we feel like is due to the stay-at-home orders and things like that. People just aren't out. So system-wide, we've seen a drop in call volume, especially over the last week in March and probably the first 2 weeks in April. Now, I could say we're watching this on a daily basis, and especially over the past week and a half, those numbers have started to climb back to the normal ranges of what we had been seeing in the past. So we are watching those numbers, like I said, on a daily basis. But overall, the service is doing what we intended. We're picking up the calls that we would have been losing otherwise. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have related to EMS, our transport services related to COVID-19 or anything else. Otherwise, that's all I got.
Chief, what are we looking at in terms of Selma with the COVID-19 numbers? Are they jumping up? Are they staying steady? How are we looking?
They are steadily climbing. That is pretty much the pattern for Fresno County as a whole and all the cities. We do attribute that to what we believe is increased testing, which, as we all know, that's something that we need to continue to move forward, is increased testing. Obviously, the more you test, you tend to have the results, you tend to have more positive results that come from that. Now that we have the increased testing, we're starting to see the tests increase. Now we'll be looking to watch for that flattening out. We also did realize, we knew that they were attributing county tests to the local cities, but we didn't know for sure how they were attributing that. We did find out that they are using zip codes. So anybody that has the Selma zip code and were to test positive would be attributed to Selma, is our
Which could
understanding.
be sphere of influence as well as city limits. Is that correct?
Correct, yes. And as everybody knows, there's a pretty large area of the county that does have a Selma zip code. So that could also be another indicator of where our numbers are at.
Jim, you had a question?
Yeah, on the COVID-19, let me, how come our numbers are all of a sudden are matched up and now with Clovis? What's going on there? What are we doing that Clovis is doing and we're not doing? What's happening there? They have a bigger population and we have a smaller population, but what is going on?
They do it, and it's tough to tell what that reason may be. Like I was saying, it could be attributed to just a large area that our zip code covers. I have not heard of anything specific, no specific hot areas within our community. The numbers still seem to be very random. There's no issues that I'm aware of a situation like a nursing home where you would see a large number of positive cases. We haven't heard any instances of, the food giveaways, anything like that, where we've had positive cases that could potentially be related to things like that. The numbers just seem to be random at this point.
Let me ask you, now I know you can't tell who they are, but can you identify their geographical work areas? Like a good example, Dinuba, their Reese's Foods, Hanford Meat, and all areas that have dramatic numbers. Are they coming from those areas, or we don't? I mean,
it would be you mean your question is, do we have anybody that lives in the community that might be working in those?
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
What I'm trying to do is kind of get a gauge,
right,
of where the activities coming from, so the residents here can be, I guess, more cautious as far as wearing masks more, more sanitized, a little more proactive,
It's very difficult for to pinpoint that. Again, all indications are that our cases are, like I said, very random. That we don't have any hot spots. We're not aware of any situations like that. We aren't aware of the calls until we respond to the location. Then we're notified through our dispatch and communications center that we are responding to a location where there is a positive case. So the information is really controlled by the county, and we react to it as we get it.
Okay, the other issue too, now, is the county, since the county is, kind of leading the operational charge, is the county being more proactive in some of these areas that are, I want to say, popping up, say, hey, this area here, these plants or whatever, do they go inside those areas and say, hey, this is what you got to change your parameters as far as status and what's going on, or the company says, well, okay, just give me the paper, I'll look at it. And
no, I do know that the county is very active in tracking cases. Contact tracing is a very active thing that they are working on increasing those capabilities. I do know that if they are able to identify a hot spot, such as a given plant or business, something to that nature, that they do take action to further decrease any additional spread that's going on within that location.
Because the reason why I'm saying that is because it puts more risk on you guys out there. the hospitals, the first responders, the law enforcement, anybody has to go to that particular area and assess that situation, not knowing, if it's a negative or a positive, you know what I mean? You don't know.
Right, and that's why we take precautions on every call that we go on. We wear masks, N95 masks on every call that we go on until we can identify that it is not a COVID-related case. And then if it is a COVID-related case, we're notified prior to our arrival through our communications center. At that point, we take even extra precaution with eye protection, gowns, and things like that will further protect our people when treating patients that are COVID-19 positive.
Hey, just be safe, guys. Thank you, Robert.
Thank you. Definitely.
Is that it, Chief Peterson?
Yes, sir.
That's it?
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you. Police Chief Gomez.
Hello.
Hello, Chief.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you fine.
Okay. So I'd like to start off with Anker Baines. On April 21st, Mayor Franco, myself, Anker, and some of the residents in his neighborhood had a meeting, 3.5-hour meeting. He brought a lot of issues to our attention and gave a historical perspective, actually, showing us a lot of video, a lot of photos. There's been a lot of problems out there, a lot of, I think the theme of my quick presentation here is going to be homelessness. A lot of those that are going out there to the property across from his house, the 3808 and 3816 Wright, are homeless. And if you go back over the years, it looks like some pretty good criminals have been frequenting that location. So since that meeting, the 21st, the police department, and not just the police department, code enforcement, animal control, public works, we have been focusing on that area. It's been getting a lot of attention. Our tactical team has responded out there. They've made arrests out there. They've stopped vehicles. Some of the problems are speeding, littering, and of course the homeless frequenting the Wright Street properties across from Anker's residence. So we're spending a lot of time out there. There was a neighborhood watch meeting last week. The mayor was there. And since the meeting that I had with Anker on the 21st, I designated a lead officer to oversee the operations out there. The POP officer is involved, and every call out there has been forwarded to me by dispatch. So we're doing everything we possibly can out there. And as an example, Friday, we were out there, we stopped the car. The guy jumped out of the car. He tried to jump the fence into the Wright Street properties, couldn't because the fence was locked. So we detained him and ended up towing his truck. And as I was out there, because one of the complaints is the dogs are coming off that property and they're going over onto Anker Yard and other yards and urinating and then walking back through the open gate. So as I'm out there, I see the dog come out and then it goes back into the property. So I called over animal control. She came over. We issued a citation. Mr. Zapata was there at the time, but he wouldn't accept the citation. But we're doing everything we can out there to make those problems go away, and we'll continue to work that. Did you want to comment at all, Mayor, on that?
No, I just know, and as well as many other council members know, that part of town has been somewhat of a trouble spot for our community, and I'm hoping that your efforts will be fruitful. I know that I speak for the rest of council that we want to improve the quality of life in not only that community, but the entire community of Selma. So we wish you well. I like your aggressiveness that you're showing, and we look for hopefully some solutions to some of the issues going out there.
Thank you. And it's not just Anker's residents. It's at that community neighborhood watch meeting, there are many people there going all the way down to Floral. So we're going to be looking at all of that, all of those grievances and complaints that have been brought to us thus far. Today, we were assisting Public Works out at Golden State and Highland. They've been clearing the oleanders going northbound on Golden State. And there was a deceased transient 64-year-old male in the oleanders there, which it appeared to be natural. He had a bag next to him, had a lot of blood in it, like he'd been coughing in it. But it just highlights the necessity to address the homeless issues in this community. So, of course, we stopped. Public Works stopped operations there, and they'll continue. I spoke with Shane. They're going to continue Monday. I'm going to be out there to provide security, of course. Raina, can you put up the first photo? Yes, very good. So this is our serial arsonist. On April 17th, he committed 9 arsons in the city, and he was arrested all within a half-hour period, and then he was captured. About a week and a half ago, Friday, KC24 wanted to do an update story on that, and the story was that he was released. He had been arrested, not by us, but by the Sheriff's Department for felony animal cruelty, and I think that was in early April. And then because of COVID, the restrictions, the Sheriff's Department released him from the jail. And that was the angle of the story, that they released him and now he comes back to Selma, he commits these crimes. Well, what I learned when I was preparing for this interview is that the district attorney's office was looking at him for attempted murder because he went out. I think he was living in this encampment, which I'm going to show you in a minute here, and he had lit a tent on fire that was occupied out at this location. Yes, right here. It's Highland and Nebraska, and I went out there today. About 3 weeks ago, I went out there for the first time because I heard about it. There were about 2 tents, and this is not a good picture I took, but now there's about 10 tents out here, and this is where Owen Aguilar lit the tent on fire that was occupied. So again, we're looking to do the same here that we did at the Raven properties and also at Rockwell Pond. So we just need to clean those up. You can see that problems occur if we let these encampments stay for even a short period of time. They just start growing and growing. And let's see the next photo, Raina. This is just a significant case we had. This is Jeannie Small. She is also homeless, but what she does is she's like a supreme squatter, and she will go into residences right by the city hall there, just east of it, and she will take over ownership of the property and act like she is either the renter or the owner of the property. So what she did is at 2630 B Street, 2630 B Street, she was living. That's when we arrested her. You can go to the next photo. Yes, that's 2630 B Street. So she was acting like she owned this property, and we went and did a search here. It's very nice inside. New carpet. The people squatting there are starting to ruin it, but it's a pretty nice property. So what happened is she was in this property on April 11th, and she robbed one of her associates. The guy's name is Ben Goss. You guys may have heard of him before, but she stole about $200 from him at gunpoint. She had a gun. She stole his $300 bike and other property of his, and he didn't report it right away, but he saw us out on a call, and he reported it, and we made her arrestable for robbery. So a week after that, it was about the 27th of April, an officer's driving by. He sees her leave this property and go across the street. He turns around, and of course, she disappeared. And you can go to the next photo, Raina. What she did, she ran across the street, and you could see the driveway there. She got underneath that tarp, and that property is just totally trashed. If you go in the backyard, which is where I went to search, it's just filled. The swimming pool is filled with murky water. It's been that way for a long time. Everywhere you walk in that backyard is junk, similar to this tarp in the driveway. That's just a bunch of junk covered up with the tarp. And we had searched it, and they allowed us to go inside and search. We didn't find her, but she was just underneath that tarp. And then as we were waiting for the canine to come and do a search, she came out and gave up. So again, homeless. And as we were there searching, code enforcement came by and they explained, hey, last week we served her with a notice at the property, and she came out as if it was her property and accepted the notice. So hopefully she doesn't come back to Selma. I understand that she's been here for about 5 years and her mother lives in Fresno. So if she gets out, hopefully she stays there. And then next photo, Raina. And then this happened just a few days ago on May 1st. This is Jason Rosati. He was riding a bicycle at McCall and Gaither, had no lights on his bike. He had an open container in his hand, was riding the wrong roadway. 1 a.m. in the morning, officer tried to stop him. He refused to stop. Officer turned his code lights on. Rosati finally stopped. Then he immediately fought with the officer. And he's pretty strong. It took a lot of officers to take him into custody. They had to use a taser on him. But fortunately, no officers got hurt, and he didn't get seriously hurt either. But the point is, this is a type of guy that is out there at night during the hours of darkness, and he's committing crimes in Selma. And this is the type of person we need to be out there stopping. This is the type of guy that is frequenting the Wright properties there at Danube and Wright. So really good stop, and great job by the officers out there. And I think that's all. I mean, it's just, there hasn't been much gang activity. I've been here 2 months. There's been one gang-related shooting where the guy got shot over by Eric White. Not saying that won't happen, more gang activity in the future, but what the problems I see right now, the trend is homeless-related crime. And we just have to keep addressing those issues with code enforcement, public works, and do the best we can out there.
Thank you, Chief. I agree. It's a team approach to address those community concerns, and I know both you and staff has council support on your good work that you're doing.
Thank you very much.
Okay, and with that, we'll move on to recreation.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Hi, Mayor, City Council. I'd just like to most recently thank Chicago Pizza again for donating to the seniors. Roscoe's Dogs also donated 2 weeks ago. And then this past week, some Second Chance Animal Shelter donated dog food to the seniors who had dogs. So they were real pleased about not only feeding the seniors, but we also took care of their animals. So I know Scott and Rose Robertson did all the packing and picked up from them. So the seniors were appreciative. We started our online classes today at the Art Center, and they're going very well. We have acting, singing, and theater classes for youth, and we only have 2 openings left for all 3 classes. So the community is adapting. We're also having a Zoom meeting on Thursday with all the recreation directors in our area to talk about ways that we can work together. We're going to be promoting other cities' online classes. So that way, if a child in Tulare wants to register for our class and pay the fee, then it will benefit us and benefit the whole valley. So a little creative work. And then we're going to kind of judge what other cities are doing to see how we are relating to them and what we have open, what we're closing, and gradually, hopefully start opening and getting some of our programs back. I did want to mention from the finance report that Assistant City Manager talked about the Art Center in Pioneer Village. We do have a little deficit, but part of that too is we've had to cancel a lot of rentals. And so that's affecting the revenue, both for the arts, for the plays, and for the weddings and the quinceañeras and that kind of things at Pioneer Village. So hopefully we get back to normal and we'll generate some more revenue.
All right. Is that it, Mr. Kirshner?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, council reports. Okay, Jim, you're up.
Okay. Hey, Joe, I have a question for you, Joe. Are you there, Chief?
I'm here.
Yeah. Hey,
Yes.
on the on-car situation, have you, I know you approached Mr. Jono Zapata Did you have a chance
Yes.
to sit down and talk to him as well?
Mr. Zapata?
Yes.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I've talked to him when I first met him about a month ago. I got his, he gave me his cell phone and I put him in my phone. And then I was out there last week, patrol check. I just parked in front of the Wright Street property, and he came up and started talking to me. He's been friendly with me, but then Friday we sighted the dog, or we're going to sight the dog. He's very unfriendly. Got mad. He stormed off. Went back in one of those houses, and I have his phone. So once we completed the sight, I called him and said, "Hey, John, are you coming out here so we can give you the sight?" he just went off on me. But no, I have talked to him. But
Okay.
Yeah.
I just wonder, okay. And as the other issue too is the, I was gonna ask you, where we at in the bike city ordinance as far as the licensing the bikes in the city of Selma?
Say it again.
We passed, we're doing the council meeting. We had a deal putting bike license on these bicycles in the city of Selma. But I understand we had to go through the DMV to.
Jim, I don't think the chief was here when we had that meeting.
Oh,
So-
okay.
So we'll have to
No,
update
no.
him and you can ask him later.
Oh, okay.
So
Another.
we'll have to update him during the week on that.
Yeah, another week. I'll ask you another time there, chief, okay?
Okay, sounds good.
Keep it up. Keep the pressure on. Keep the team in to bring in this, the probation operation sweep. That's effective. And tell the guys, be safe out there. Always be safe.
Sure will. Thank you.
Thank you. That's all I got to say.
Councilmember Trio?
Just like to say, thank you, Chief. You're doing a good job. Fire Chief, you're doing a good job. Everybody's doing a good job. Question I have is really quick is with the City Attorney Neil. Could we document this information we got going with John Zapata's property in regards to the financial cost that it's incurring the city and start talking about eminent domain?
Well, absolutely you could, sure. And ultimately
I
assess
think
those
that would bring them
costs,
to the table, right?
ultimately assess those costs against him for your enforcement efforts, yes.
Okay, that's okay. I just like to say that in the last couple of weeks, we've been doing a good job in giving out food. I think Chicago Pizza's been giving out food. I think the Sakar's been giving out the restaurant. I got the name wrong. Soka's been giving out food, and this community, the Catholic Church been giving out food. I think there's so many groups in our community giving out food, and I really appreciate everybody stepping up. I think us as council members and mayors and everybody's been stepping up. I think it's really good. You know, Scott and Rose, you guys have been stepping up, and everybody's been doing a good effort. And I think everybody should commend themselves. The city staff's been doing a great job, and I just want everybody to know, take note that this city's doing really well. We're doing really good. We've been giving out. Everybody's been supportive, and I just want to commend all the staff, department heads, city manager, and everybody for all the good job we're doing. So, hand it to all of you guys. That's all.
Thank you, John. Councilmember Robertson?
Yeah, I agree with Councilman Trillo. The staff is really doing a great job. And as all of the essential workers and all the first responders are, and especially the medical personnel who are on the front lines, I want to say thank you for everybody who's really stepped up during this very, very tough time. Also wanted to just reiterate that if you're a sole proprietor or you're a member of the gig economy, an Uber driver, a sole proprietor hairdresser, you can apply for pandemic unemployment assistance at edd-ca.gov. That opened up on Monday, April 28th, and I'd encourage everybody to go on that who was kind of left behind by the Payroll Protection Act and the EID to get in there and see if you can get something to replace that valuable income while we're still under lockdown. I attended the San Joaquin Valley Special City Selection Committee meeting on Zoom. Thank you to Shane, Public Works Director, for coming back to Selma on the Saturday from his home. And he did that on a moment's notice to come rescue a kitten that was stuck in a rain gutter. This 5-day-old kitten is, now in foster and he'll be available in 7 weeks to adopt. And guess what we named him? Shane. So if you want to adopt Shane, he'll step up in a few weeks. I think the current challenge right now is to reopen our economy, but to do it safely in stages. I think after, that we should be planning. And I'm really happy that we talked about some of these tough budget items tonight. We need to keep talking about them, especially the shortfall in sales tax that's coming, and also the discount rate with CalPERS, with the stock market kind of tanking the way it is. I would hate for the city to get a double whammy of lower sales tax and then, a lower interest rate that we have to supplement and the employees have to supplement. I really hope the governor will take a look at freezing that discount rate. That financial presentation was really sobering. And I really heard tonight that we're going to be taking these challenges head on, which we have to do. No amount, and I appreciate Councilman Avalos's attention to this, no amount is negligible. Right now we're going to have to, count every penny. And I think we have to really take to heart our fiduciary duty that we're spending other people's money and we should be spending it like it's our own. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Guerra.
Okay, I too would like to thank the staff and of course the first responders and of course Chief for doing a phenomenal job. I also would like to do a special thank you to Raina, our city clerk, for getting the information for the census out to all the businesses. The census is going to be very, very important. It's going to be part of the recovery for our community. And we really need to capture every person that lives in Selma so that we can get our fair share of the money to help repair our schools, the hospital, our first responders, roads, just everything. So thank you again, Raina, and thank you for the robocall. That was really another good, I would say, proactiveness to the city to get this census completed. And she mentioned that we're about 50% now completed. So that's really a great start for Selma. So let's keep completing it. Make sure you can tell everybody, tell your neighbors, your family members to please complete it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Guerra. Okay. I, along with the city manager, have been on our weekly call with the California Cal OES Region 5 team, getting all the COVID updates down from the state level, down from the county level. We do that every Wednesday. A lot of good information there that staff has been using to serve the community. Also, just to repeat what city manager said is we did get our high-speed workforce development career center approved. So that's going to be a big step, also a big tool for someone to get some job training as we enter into the recovery of our soon upon us economic crisis. I met with TJ Cox and actually going to meet with TJ Cox again this weekend, talking about some long-term recovery plans for Selma and the entire district that he serves. As we all heard today, the governor is talking about going into phase 2 on hopefully Friday and opening up some more businesses. So hopefully that's the case. And as we all stated, we just practice good physical distancing and be safe out there. But let's go out there and support those non-essential businesses that do open up here in town, because they need it and we need it, and it's just good for the community. And then also I want to thank the Selma Business Alliance for all the work they've been doing for all the small businesses, not only in Selma, but the surrounding area. They've done some great things involving the CARES Act. And also the group of volunteers, the SAVA group volunteers that are helping all the organizations serve the community during this pandemic. That's a really good thing. They're getting a lot of good press, not only from Selma, but throughout the valley. It just shows the type of quality people that we have here in Selma. I heard a saying many years ago, I think Sandy Nicewater was the first one I heard it when she was on council. And she says, they have a saying about Selma, Selma takes care of their own, and that's always evident anytime us that we are a community are pushed or challenged with an emergency or a tragedy. We do always rally and pull together as community, and that's what makes Selma so great. That's all I have to say, and I want everybody to be safe. So that'll end my comments. So with that, we'll move on to oral communications. Notice to the public: at this time, any member of the public may address the city council regarding any item which the council has jurisdiction. No action or discussion will be taken on any item not on the agenda. Issue raised will be referred to the city manager for review. Members of the public shall limit the remarks to 3 minutes. City clerk, do we have anybody wishing to comment?
We have no one on the line.
Okay, with that, then I'm looking for a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second it.
Okay, so moved. All right, meeting is adjourned. We'll see everybody in 2 weeks.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Hey, Raina, can you hear me?
I can, yes.
I'll be in tomorrow about 11 a.m. to sign any necessary paperwork. Is that, will that work?
That'll work perfectly. Thank you, sir.
About 11:15. So,
That'll work.
all right. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.